Welcome, dear listener. Tonight we drift together into a story older than memory itself, a whisper from the red planet that hangs in our evening sky. As you settle into this moment, let your shoulders drop away from your ears. Feel the weight of your body sinking gently into whatever supports you now. Tonight's journey takes us to Mars, not as a barren world of dust and iron oxide, but as it might have been long before our own world knew the footsteps of humanity. We'll wonder together about civilizations that may have walked under different stars, breathed different air, and left traces we're only now beginning to understand. You don't need to follow every word, you don't need to remember each detail. Simply let the story carry you like a leaf floating on a quiet stream. If you drift away into sleep, the words will still be here, a gentle companion in the darkness. Before we begin our descent through time and space, if this journey brings you peace, consider leaving a quiet mark of your presence. Like and subscribe to this channel, and in the comments below, share which country you're listening from and what time it is where you rest tonight. Imagine all of us scattered across this turning earth, looking up at the same Mars, wondering together. Now take a deep breath in, hold it gently, and release. Let us begin. Picture yourself standing on a hillside at dusk somewhere on ancient Earth, long before cities touched the horizon. The sky deepens from blue to indigo to the rich purple of cosmic velvet. One by one, the stars emerge, those eternal companions that have watched over every civilization that ever was. And there, among them, a point of light that doesn't quite twinkle like the others. A steady, rust-colored gleam. Mars, the wanderer, the red star that moved differently through the constellations, puzzling skywatchers across millennia. Our ancestors called it many names. The Romans named it for their god of war, drawn perhaps by its blood-red hue. The Egyptians called it Hor-Desher, the Red One. The Chinese knew it as the Fire Star. Every culture that looked upward noticed this peculiar visitor in the night, this world that seemed to call out to something deep in human consciousness. But what if those ancient peoples gazing at that crimson point of light were looking not at a dead world, but at the grave of the first civilization? What if Mars was not always the cold, wind-swept desert we know today? What if, billions of years ago, when Earth was still a violent cauldron of molten rock and crushing impacts, Mars was already singing with life? Let your imagination drift backward now through time like falling through soft clouds. We move past recorded history, past the first cities of Mesopotamia, past the cave painters of Lascaux, past the migration of Homo sapiens out of Africa. Further still, past the age of dinosaurs, past the first forests, past the first stirrings of life in Earth's ancient oceans. We travel back 4 billion years to a solar system so young that the sun itself burned with a different intensity. Earth is barely recognizable, a hellscape of volcanic fury and asteroid bombardment. The moon hangs closer in the sky, vast and threatening. This is no world for life, not yet. But Mars, the fourth planet from our young sun, tells a different story. In this ancient time, Mars possesses something Earth does not yet have: stability. It cooled faster than Earth, being smaller, more distant from the sun's rage. Its crust solidified earlier, and most importantly, it held something precious in the cosmic economy of life: liquid water. Imagine standing now not on Earth, but on this ancient Mars. Beneath your feet, red soil rich in iron oxide, but also minerals, salts, and the chemistry of possibility. Above you, a sky that would look strange to your eyes, thicker than Mars appears today, perhaps with a gentle pink hue that deepens to blue at the zenith. The atmospheric pressure is higher, the temperature warmer. You're standing at the edge of something extraordinary. Before you stretches an ocean, Not the frozen wastes of today's Martian poles, but a true ocean, liquid and moving, catching the light of the young sun in ripples that extend to the horizon. Scientists call this lost ocean Oceanus Borealis, and evidence suggests it once covered nearly a third of the Martian surface, pooled in the vast northern lowlands of the planet. The sound of water lapping against an alien shore. Can you hear it in your mind? The gentle rhythm, that universal music that speaks to something primal in us. Water means possibility. Water means change. Water means life. Along the shores of this ancient sea, river deltas spread like the fingers of a vast hand, depositing sediments from highlands carved by rainfall and snowmelt. Yes, Mars once knew rain. Clouds gathered in its sky, released their burden, and the water cycled as it does on Earth, a planetary breath of liquid and vapor. In the highlands, volcanoes stood sentinel, but not yet the massive shields we know today. Olympus Mons, destined to become the largest volcano in the solar system, was perhaps only beginning its long growth. But other peaks steamed and rumbled, adding gases to the atmosphere, carbon dioxide and water vapor, thickening the blanket that kept this world warm enough for liquid water to persist. Let your breathing slow now, matching the rhythm of those ancient waves, in and out like tides governed by Mars's two small moons, Phobos and Deimos. These moons, whose names mean fear and panic, hung closer to Mars then, racing across the sky in hours rather than days. This is the Mars we rarely imagine, the Mars that existed before Earth could sustain a civilization, before Earth could sustain anything at all. A world with oceans and rivers, with a water cycle and weather, with all the ingredients that on our world led eventually to the miracle of life. And if life, why not intelligence? If intelligence, why not civilization? The question hangs in the air like mist over that ancient sea. Let it drift through your mind without urgency. There's no need to grasp at answers. Simply float with the possibility as we prepare to dive deeper into this mystery, this dream of an ancient world that may have known wonders before Earth ever could. Rest now in this image, a living Mars, young and vital, under a sky that held both promise and secrets. The red planet before it turned red with death, when it might have been red with the iron-rich soils that nurtured the first roots, the first reaching of organized complexity toward the stars. We'll explore this possibility together gently through the long hours ahead. But for now, simply breathe with those ancient Martian waves, in and out, rising and falling, the rhythm of water on an alien shore 4 billion years ago when Earth was still learning how to be a world. As you settle deeper into comfort, let's explore what we know about Mars with the gentleness of starlight, each fact a soft gleam in the darkness rather than a harsh spotlight. Modern science speaks to us in the language of evidence, and Mars has been whispering its secrets to our spacecraft, our rovers, our patient observations. These whispers tell a story that would have seemed like pure fantasy just decades ago. They tell us that Mars was not always the frozen desert we see today. Imagine the surface of Mars as a book, its pages written in stone and dust. Our robotic explorers have been learning to read this book, letter by letter, discovering a narrative of transformation that spans billions of years. The first chapter of this book speaks of water, abundant and persistent. The Mars rovers, those brave mechanical wanderers, have found rounded pebbles in ancient riverbeds, stones worn smooth by flowing water, just as pebbles in an earth stream are polished by centuries of current. These aren't scattered accidents, they form layers, deposits, the unmistakable signature of rivers that flowed for long periods, possibly millions of years. Close your eyes and picture the Curiosity rover, no larger than a small car, perched in Gale Crater. This crater was once a lake, held water for potentially tens of millions of years. The rover has analyzed mudstones formed from ancient lakebed sediments. These aren't just rocks, they're time capsules, preserving the chemical conditions of that long-lost lake. And what do those conditions tell us? That the water was neutral to slightly alkaline, not too acidic, not too basic. Just right for life as we know it. The lake contained essential elements: carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, oxygen, phosphorus, sulfur. Scientists call these the building blocks of life, and they were all present in this ancient Martian lake, dissolved and available, waiting. Let your mind drift over the Martian surface as it was then 3.5 billion years ago. Valley networks, carved by flowing water, branch across the highlands like the veins in a leaf. Some of these valleys stretch for hundreds of kilometers, testament to sustained periods of rainfall or snowmelt. The planet had a hydrological cycle, water moving from surface to atmosphere and back again, each cycle shaping the landscape a little more. The northern lowlands held that vast ocean we imagined earlier. Recent studies of the Martian surface have identified shoreline features, terraces that mark ancient sea levels. The evidence grows stronger with each new analysis. Mars had an ocean that might have held more water than the Arctic Ocean on Earth. Think of it, waves on an alien sea, tides pulled by those two swift moons, perhaps even storms brewing on the horizon. But water alone doesn't tell the whole story. For liquid water to exist, Mars needed a thicker atmosphere, warmer temperatures. The Mars we see today has an atmospheric pressure less than 1% of Earth's, far too thin to allow liquid water on the surface. Any water exposed to today's Martian atmosphere would instantly boil away or freeze. So what happened? What changed? The answer lies partly in Mars's size. Being smaller than Earth, Mars cooled faster. Its molten iron core, which once generated a global magnetic field like Earth's protective bubble, solidified and died. Without that magnetic field, Mars became vulnerable to the solar wind, the stream of charged particles flowing constantly from the Sun. On Earth, our magnetic field deflects most of the solar wind, protecting our atmosphere. But Mars, stripped of its shield, slowly lost its atmosphere to space. The solar wind stripped it away, molecule by molecule, over millions of years. As the atmosphere thinned, the greenhouse effect weakened. Temperatures dropped, the water began to disappear, either freezing into the polar ice caps and underground deposits, or evaporating into space. Let yourself feel the sadness of this transformation, gentle as an autumn leaf falling. A world that once held such promise, slowly freezing, its atmosphere stolen by solar wind, its oceans turning to ice. It's a slow death, taking millions of years, but inevitable given the planet's size and distance from the Sun. Yet even in this loss, there's something profound to contemplate. The transformation didn't happen overnight. For millions, perhaps hundreds of millions of years, Mars existed in a transition state, with liquid water still present, in protected locations, with an atmosphere gradually thinning but not yet gone entirely. If life arose during Mars's wet period, it would have had time to adapt, to move underground, to follow the retreating water into the depths. On Earth, we find life in the most extreme environments, kilometers deep in rock, in boiling hot springs, in ice sheets, in the driest deserts. Life, once it gains a foothold, is remarkably persistent. And if life, perhaps even complex life, arose on Mars during those hundreds of millions of years of habitability, might it not have left traces? Fossils in the ancient lake beds, chemical signatures in the rocks, perhaps even artifacts if intelligence emerged. This is where science edges toward speculation, and speculation invites imagination. Let yourself wonder without judgment. The universe is vast and strange, and we've barely begun to read the story written in the rocks of other worlds. Consider the timeline with a sense of cosmic patience. Earth formed about 4.5 billion years ago, roughly the same time as Mars, but Earth remained largely uninhabitable for its first several hundred million years, bombarded by asteroids covered in magma oceans. Mars, cooling faster, may have become habitable much earlier. The oldest evidence of life on Earth dates to about 3.5 billion years ago, simple microbes preserved in ancient rocks. But Mars was already habitable 4 billion years ago, potentially giving life there a head start of several hundred million years. What can happen in several hundred million years? On Earth, that's enough time for life to evolve from simple cells to complex multicellular organisms, to develop specialized tissues, perhaps even primitive nervous systems. The Cambrian explosion, when complex life suddenly diversified on Earth, happened over about 50 million years. Mars had several times that length of head start. Let these numbers wash over you like gentle waves, not demanding memorization, but creating a sense of deep time, of vast opportunity for life to experiment with different forms, different solutions to the challenges of existence. And here's a thought to carry into the deeper waters of sleep. If Mars once had life, and Earth once had very little atmosphere, and was inhospitable, where did Earth's life come from? Could it have started on Mars first, then traveled to Earth on meteorites blasted from the Martian surface by asteroid impacts? This idea, called panspermia, suggests that life might spread from world to world, hitchhiking on rocks thrown into space by cosmic collisions. We know Martian meteorites reach Earth. We've found dozens of them. If life existed on Mars during that ancient wet period, microscopic organisms could potentially survive the journey through space, protected within rocks and seed life on other worlds. Perhaps we are all Martians, descendants of hardy microbes that made the journey from the red planet to the blue. Our earliest ancestors may have gazed up at Mars, not knowing they were looking at their original home. Let that possibility settle over you like a soft blanket. The connection between worlds, the possibility that life in our solar system has a shared heritage, that the boundaries between Earth and Mars are more porous than we imagined. As you drift deeper into relaxation, hold this image. Ancient Mars, wet and alive, under a thicker atmosphere. Earth, still cooling, not yet ready for life. And between them, the slow cosmic exchange of material, rocks traveling through space, carrying perhaps the seeds of life from one world to another. The story grows more intricate, more mysterious, but we've only just begun. Rest now in these scientific whispers, these gentle revelations from the red planet. The deeper mysteries await us in the chapters ahead, but there's no hurry. Time, in cosmic terms, moves like honey, slow and golden and infinite. Breathe with the rhythm of planetary formation, the slow cooling of worlds, the patient emergence of possibility. In and out, rising and falling. The universe breathing itself into being, one moment at a time. As you sink deeper into this journey, let's turn our attention to something that dwells in the borderlands between history and legend, between science and story. Let's explore what ancient peoples might have known, or imagined, or remembered about Mars. Every culture that watched the night sky noticed Mars, its distinctive red color, and its apparent wandering through the constellations made it impossible to ignore. But perhaps there's something more to these ancient observations, something that hints at deeper knowledge or collective memory. Picture yourself in ancient Babylon, standing on a ziggurat at night, warm wind carrying the scent of the Euphrates River. Above you, the sky is unpolluted by artificial light, and the stars shine with a clarity lost to most modern eyes. Babylonian astronomers, the first to keep systematic records of celestial movements, tracked Mars with remarkable precision. They called it Nergal after their god of war and plague, but also of the underworld and the desert. Already we see the association with death, with the realm beneath, with barren places. Did they sense something about Mars, some intuition that this red world was a place of endings? The Babylonians could predict Mars's movements through the sky with such accuracy that their observations are still studied today. They knew that Mars sometimes appears to move backward against the stars, a phenomenon called retrograde motion. They recorded these patterns on clay tablets, cuneiform script preserving knowledge across millennia, but they may have recorded more than just movements. Some scholars interpret certain Babylonian texts as describing Mars differently than they describe it now, hinting at a world that changed. These interpretations are controversial, existing at the edge of academic acceptance, but they whisper of ancient astronomers noticing something different about the red planet. Let your mind drift now to ancient Egypt, to the banks of the Nile where civilization flowered in the desert. Egyptian astronomers called Mars Hordesher, the red Horus, linking it to the falcon-headed god. But there are curious texts, fragments, and inscriptions that some researchers believe suggest the Egyptians thought of Mars as a world that once held water, that once had life. One inscription, weathered and debated, seems to describe Mars as a place where the waters retreated and the sands advanced. Mainstream archaeologists interpret this as poetic description or misidentification with some earthly location. But a few voices wonder, could ancient observers, through generations of watching, have noticed changes in Mars? Could they have preserved oral traditions that remembered a different Mars? The evidence is thin, interpretable in many ways, easy to dismiss. But it's intriguing to consider that ancient peoples who spent far more time watching the sky than we do might have noticed things that escaped later observers. In ancient China, astronomers tracked Mars as Yinghuo, the fire star. Chinese astronomical records extend back thousands of years, some of the longest continuous observations of any culture. They noted Mars's brightness changes, its color variations, its position with meticulous care. Some Chinese texts describe Mars in terms that could be interpreted as atmospheric phenomena, clouds or storms on its surface. Modern telescopes sometimes observe dust storms on Mars that can envelop the entire planet. Could ancient observers with exceptional eyesight and clear skies have noticed the planet dimming during these global dust storms? Or consider the Dogon people of Mali in West Africa, whose astronomical knowledge has puzzled anthropologists. The Dogon possess complex understanding of stellar systems, including detailed knowledge about Sirius B, a white dwarf star invisible to the naked eye and not discovered by Western astronomy until the late 19th century. Some researchers report that Dogon oral tradition includes stories about Mars as a world that once had water, though these reports are controversial and possibly influenced by modern contamination of traditional knowledge. The truth is difficult to untangle, but the possibility that ancient cultures preserved some understanding of Mars as a changed world is worth contemplating gently without rushing to conclusions. Now let yourself drift across the ocean to the Americas, where the Maya developed sophisticated astronomical observations. They tracked Venus with incredible precision, creating tables that could predict its movements for centuries. Did they also track Mars? The records are less clear, many codices destroyed by Spanish conquest, but hints remain that Mars held significance in Mayan cosmology. The Aztecs called Mars Huitzilopochtli, their god of war and the sun, and associated it with fire and blood. Across cultures and continents, separated by oceans and millennia, human beings looked at this red point of light and saw death, war, blood, endings. The association is almost universal. Is this simply because of its red color suggesting blood? Perhaps? Or could there be something deeper, a collective unconscious memory of a world that died, a civilization that fell, a cautionary tale written in the sky? Carl Jung spoke of the collective unconscious, inherited memories and archetypes shared across humanity. While this concept is not accepted in its entirety by modern psychology, the question it raises is profound. Can knowledge persist across generations without written records, encoded in myths and symbols? Consider the many flood myths found across unconnected cultures worldwide. The biblical flood, the Epic of Gilgamesh, Aboriginal Australian stories, Native American traditions. Science has shown that rising sea levels at the end of the last ice age created catastrophic floods in many regions. Did the trauma of these events encode itself in human storytelling, passed down until it became myth? If such transmission is possible for Earth's own history, might there be something similar for Mars? Could ancient peoples have somehow sensed or known that Mars was different once, that it represented a world that failed, a planet that died? The idea seems far-fetched when we examine it in the light of day, but here in the gentle darkness, let yourself wonder. The universe is strange and consciousness is stranger still. We don't fully understand how memory works, how knowledge transmits across generations, how the human mind connects to the cosmos around it. There are also physical possibilities to consider, less mystical, but equally intriguing. Mars periodically comes very close to Earth, a configuration called opposition. During these close approaches, Mars appears larger and brighter in our sky. With exceptional eyesight and steady atmospheric conditions, ancient observers might have been able to see features on Mars's disk with the naked eye. Modern experiments have shown that humans with excellent vision can perceive details on Mars during close opposition, making out the polar ice caps and possibly large dark features. Ancient peoples who spent lifetimes watching the sky with full dark adaptation and no light pollution might have seen even more. What would they make of a world that visibly possessed ice caps, features that changed with Martian seasons, patterns that suggested a complex surface? Might they have intuited that this was a world like Earth, but different, changed, perhaps dying or dead? These are questions without firm answers, twilight questions that exist in the space between knowledge and imagination. Let them float through your mind without urgency, like clouds drifting across an evening sky. As you breathe slowly in and out, consider one more ancient connection. In Greek mythology, Mars was Ares, the god of war, but also the lover of Aphrodite, goddess of love and beauty. Venus, Aphrodite's planetary namesake, is Earth's closest planetary neighbor on the other side, while Mars is our closest neighbor beyond. The myths speak of the balance between war and love, destruction and creation, endings and beginnings. In astronomical terms, Earth sits between Venus, a hellish hothouse, and Mars, a frozen desert. We inhabit the narrow middle ground where life can flourish, between extremes that would destroy us. Did the ancients sense this cosmic positioning, this balance? Their myths and symbols often reflect surprising sophistication about celestial mechanics and relationships between worlds. Let these thoughts merge now with the rhythm of your breath, becoming less distinct, more dreamlike. Ancient knowledge, modern science, myth and fact, all blending together like watercolors on wet paper. The boundaries between them soften, and what emerges is a deeper question. What is the relationship between consciousness and cosmos, between human knowing and universal truth? Perhaps knowledge comes to us through many channels, not just the rational scientific method, but also through intuition, imagination, the symbolic language of dreams and myths. Perhaps ancient peoples, living closer to nature, more attuned to subtle rhythms, could sense things about the universe that we've forgotten how to perceive. Or perhaps they simply saw a red star and imagined stories as humans always have, finding patterns and meanings whether or not they exist objectively. But even this impulse to make meaning, to create stories about the cosmos, reveals something profound about who we are as a species. We are the creatures who look up and wonder. We are the beings who ask, what if? The same impulse that drove ancient astronomers to track Mars across the sky drives our modern spacecraft to explore its surface. We are all connected in this questioning, this reaching toward the mysteries above us. Rest now in that connection, that thread of wonder, stretching from ancient Babylon to the rovers currently exploring Martian plains. Humanity has always looked at Mars and sensed both danger and possibility, death and the promise of understanding. The red planet watches over us as it has for millennia, keeping its secrets while slowly revealing them, one discovery at a time. And we watch back, generation after generation, unable to look away from that steady crimson gleam. Let your eyes close if they haven't already. Let the ancient astronomers fade into starlight. The myths dissolve into the darkness behind your eyelids. What remains is just the quiet rhythm of breath, the gentle pulse of wondering, the soft descent into deeper mysteries that await us in the chapters ahead. Sleep comes when it's ready, and the story continues whether you're awake to hear it or not. Like Mars itself, patient and eternal, waiting for us to understand. As we drift deeper into our journey together, we come to one of the most captivating mysteries ever to emerge from Mars, a mystery that captured imaginations worldwide and continues to whisper questions even after decades of investigation. Picture the year 1976. On Earth, humanity is still in the early days of planetary exploration. The Viking missions, two identical spacecraft, are orbiting and landing on Mars, sending back the first high-resolution images of the Martian surface. Scientists and the public wait eagerly for each new image to download pixel by pixel, revealing an alien world. On July 25, 1976, the Viking 1 orbiter photographs a region called Cydonia, an area in Mars's northern hemisphere where ancient highlands meet lowland plains. Among the thousands of images transmitted back to Earth, one particular photograph captures something that will haunt and fascinate people for generations. In the image, emerging from shadows cast by the late afternoon sun, a formation that looks unmistakably like a face. Not just any face, but a humanoid face, gazing upward toward the sky, as if a massive sculpture lies half buried in the Martian sands. Let yourself imagine seeing this image for the first time, knowing nothing about it beforehand. You're looking at a photograph from another world, and there, undeniably, is something that resembles a face. Two eyes symmetrically placed, a nose, a mouth. The proportions, the features, all recognizable, all eerily familiar. The formation measures about 1 mile long and half a mile wide, far larger than any sculpture on Earth. If it's artificial, it represents engineering on a scale that dwarfs the pyramids, Mount Rushmore, any human construction. The implications are staggering. NASA's initial response is measured but curious. In the press release announcing the discovery, they call it a huge rock formation which resembles a human head, formed by shadows giving the illusion of eyes, nose, and mouth. They acknowledge it's interesting, but suggest it's a trick of light and shadow, a case of pareidolia, our tendency to see familiar patterns, especially faces, in random shapes. But the image doesn't fade from public consciousness. It spreads through popular culture, appearing in books, documentaries, television shows. Some researchers begin examining it more carefully, and the questions multiply. Near the face, other formations seem equally unusual. A group of small hills that some observers claim form a pattern, arranged in ways that seem too regular to be random. Researchers give these formations names: the D&M Pyramid, the city, the fort. Together, this region of Cydonia appears to some as an archaeological site, ruins of structures built long ago. One researcher, Richard Hoagland, proposes that the face and surrounding formations were built by an ancient Martian civilization, perhaps as a marker, a message, or a monument. He analyzes the geometric relationships between the features, finding angles and ratios that he argues are too precise to be natural. The mathematics become complex, involving sacred geometry, the golden ratio, alignments with Martian sunrise at specific times of year. Supporters argue that the patterns are too numerous and too precise to be coincidence. Skeptics counter that if you look hard enough for patterns, you'll find them even in random data, that the human mind excels at creating order from chaos. Let yourself feel the pull of both perspectives without needing to choose between them. The desire to find evidence of other civilizations, other minds like ours that have gazed at stars and built monuments, is deeply human. We long not to be alone in the universe. The face on Mars offers the tantalizing possibility that we're not. At the same time, science teaches us to be cautious, to demand extraordinary evidence for extraordinary claims. A blurry photograph from the 1970s, taken in specific lighting conditions, isn't enough to overturn our understanding of Mars and its history. The debate rages through the 1980s and 1990s. People aligned themselves on either side, believers who see clear evidence of artificial structures, skeptics who see nothing but rocks and shadows. The face becomes a symbol, a Rorschach test onto which people project their hopes and fears about our place in the cosmos. Then, in 1998, the Mars Global Surveyor spacecraft returns to Cydonia with much higher resolution cameras. The new images are sharper, taken in different lighting conditions, revealing details invisible in the original Viking photographs. What do they show? The face is still there, but it looks different. In the harsh light of Martian noon, without the dramatic shadows, it looks less like a face and more like a mesa, a natural rock formation weathered by wind and time. The symmetry that seemed so pronounced in the Viking image appears less perfect. Features that looked like eyes and mouth resolve into eroded craters and irregular rock surfaces. For many, this settles the question. The face on Mars is a natural formation that happened through cosmic coincidence and favorable lighting in one photograph to look like a face. Pareidolia, exactly as NASA initially suggested. Case closed, but for others, questions remain. Some argue that the newer images show a weathered version of what was once a clearer face, that millions of years of wind erosion have degraded the features. Others suggest that there are still anomalies in the surrounding region that deserve investigation. And here, in the gentle darkness of this journey, we can hold space for uncertainty. Perhaps the face is entirely natural, a cautionary tale about seeing patterns where none exist. Or perhaps it's something more complex, a natural formation that an ancient civilization modified, or a structure so ancient that time has nearly erased it, leaving only hints. The truth is, we don't know with absolute certainty. Even with modern images, the interpretation of what we're seeing involves judgment calls about what's natural and what might not be. Most planetary scientists consider the matter resolved, but science always leaves room for new evidence, new interpretations. What the face on Mars teaches us, regardless of its origin, is something about ourselves. It reveals our deep longing to find companionship in the universe, our readiness to interpret ambiguous evidence as signs of intelligence, our hope that we're not alone. Consider how quickly humans embraced the possibility of the face being artificial. Within weeks of the Viking image being released, people were convinced they were looking at proof of alien civilization. This speaks to something profound about the human condition, our desperate need to connect, to find others like us, to know that intelligence and consciousness have arisen elsewhere. Carl Sagan spoke about this human tendency with both understanding and gentle skepticism. He coined the phrase, "extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence," and the face on Mars became one of his favorite examples. But he also understood why people wanted to believe. The universe is vast and mostly empty, and we are so small and brief. The idea that we might have neighbors, even long extinct ones, offers comfort against the cosmic loneliness. Let your breath slow now, matching the patient turning of Mars as it rotates through day and night. The face, whether natural or artificial, sits in the Cydonia region, unchanged by our debates about it, by our hopes and skepticism. It simply is a formation of rock and dust on a distant world, reflecting sunlight back into space. If it is natural, it reminds us that the universe creates beautiful patterns without intention, that the same forces that shape rocks can occasionally, randomly, produce something that speaks to us across the void. Nature is the greatest artist, working without plan or purpose, yet creating wonders that captivate us. If it's artificial, if some vanished civilization carved or built it, then it represents one of the most profound discoveries in human history, evidence that we're not the only conscious beings to arise in this solar system, that Mars once knew minds that could shape stone, that could create monuments to themselves or their gods or their understanding of the cosmos. Either way, the face has served a purpose. It's drawn our attention to Mars, inspired missions, sparked imaginations. It's taught us to look more carefully at other worlds, to wonder what else we might find. And it's revealed something about ourselves, about how ready we are to believe, how eager to find meaning in the patterns we perceive. As you sink deeper into relaxation, picture the face as it sits now under the pink Martian sky, sculpted by wind, perhaps visited by dust devils that dance across its features. If you could stand before it, you'd see a mesa like many others on Mars, shaped by erosion, textured by impact craters, weathered by eons. But you might also feel something else, some lingering question. In the right light, at the right angle, does some hint of design remain? Is there something in its proportions, its orientation, that suggests more than random chance? The universe keeps its secrets, and Mars keeps this one. The face watches the stars as it has for millions or billions of years, whether it was made by intelligence or by the blind artistry of wind and time. And we watch back, wondering, always wondering. Let that wondering carry you deeper now into the mysteries that wait in the next phase of our journey. The story of Mars, whether it ever held civilization or not, is far from complete. We're still learning to read the book written in its rocks, still uncovering clues about its ancient past. The face is just one puzzle piece, one question mark in a landscape full of them. And as we continue our exploration, we'll discover other anomalies, other mysteries, other reasons to wonder what Mars might have been before it became the frozen desert we see today. Rest in the not knowing, rest in the possibility. The universe is under no obligation to make sense to us, but it generously offers endless puzzles for those who look with eyes of wonder. Breathe with the wind that carved the face, whether that wind shaped a natural mesa or weathered an ancient monument. In and out, eroding and shaping, the slow work of time that transforms everything, that hides some truths while revealing others. The night deepens, the stars wheel overhead. Mars continues its eternal orbit, carrying its mysteries with patience older than memory. And we drift onward, through the story, through the dark, toward dreams that may hold their own truths. Let yourself float now into a realm where water tells stories, where the history of entire worlds is written in the patient language of erosion, deposition, and flow. We return to the evidence of water on ancient Mars, but now we explore it with a dreamer's patience, letting each discovery wash over us like gentle waves. Water remembers everything it touches. On Earth, rivers carve canyons over millions of years, leaving their signature in the rock. Oceans leave shells and sediments that compress into limestone. Rain shapes landscapes, each drop contributing to the slow sculpture of continents. On Mars, water has left its memories everywhere, if you know how to read them. Picture yourself as one of the Mars rovers, perhaps Curiosity, slowly rolling across the floor of Gale Crater. Your wheels crunch over soil that hasn't been disturbed in billions of years. Your cameras sweep the landscape, and your instruments analyze every rock you pass. And what you find are stories of water, countless stories, layered upon each other like pages in a book. Gale Crater itself is a library of liquid history. The crater formed from an asteroid impact billions of years ago, and over retry and continue edit. Time, water filled it, creating a lake that persisted for potentially millions of years. How do we know this? The rocks tell us. Within the crater rises Mount Sharp, a mountain 3 miles high, composed entirely of layered sedimentary rocks. These layers built up over time as sediment settled to the bottom of the ancient lake, year after year, century after century, millennium after millennium. Each layer is a page in the story, recording the conditions of that ancient water. Curiosity has climbed through these layers, analyzing them with instruments more sophisticated than many Earth laboratories. The rover has found mudstones, rocks that can only form when fine clay particles settle through still water. It's found minerals that form only in the presence of liquid water, chemical signatures that speak of lakes that were neither too acidic nor too alkaline, but somewhere in that gentle middle zone where life as we know it could potentially exist. Let your mind drift through these ancient waters now, not as they are, but as they were. Imagine floating in this Martian lake 3.5 billion years ago. The water around you is cool but not cold, fresh, not salt, rich with dissolved minerals. Above you, a sky that might be blue-gray, clouds forming and dissipating in patterns driven by Martian weather systems. Below you, sediment slowly settling, creating the layers that will eventually become Mount Sharp. The water is clear enough to see down into the depths, where the crater floor lies buried under accumulating mud. Small particles drift past you like snow, the debris of weathering from the surrounding highlands carried here by streams that feed into this lake. On the shore, perhaps the evidence of seasonal changes. The lake level rises and falls with wet seasons and dry seasons, with snow melt from distant mountains, with the slow wobble of Mars's orbit that creates climate cycles thousands of years long. And in the water, at the muddy bottom, in the films of minerals on submerged rocks, might there be something stirring, molecules organizing themselves, chemistry becoming biology, the first trembling steps toward life? We don't know. We haven't found fossils yet, haven't detected unambiguous biosignatures. But the conditions were right. The lake persisted long enough. The chemistry was favorable. On Earth, life arose in less hospitable conditions and in less time. Let yourself wonder, without urgency, what might have lived in these ancient Martian waters. Would it resemble Earth life? Single cells with different biochemistry, perhaps, but solving similar problems. How to gather energy, how to reproduce, how to maintain order against entropy's slow pull toward chaos. Or might Martian life have been entirely different, using chemistry we haven't imagined, structures we wouldn't recognize? Life on Earth uses carbon as its backbone, water as its solvent, DNA as its information storage. But these might not be the only solutions. Silicon instead of carbon, ammonia instead of water, different molecules encoding genetic information. The lake in Gale Crater is just one of many ancient water bodies we've identified on Mars. Across the planet, our orbiting spacecraft have mapped thousands of ancient river valleys, the dry beds of streams that once flowed with liquid water. Picture flying over Mars now, high enough to see the whole hemisphere spread beneath you. The ancient highlands are traced with networks of valleys, branching and converging like blood vessels in a body. These aren't straight channels carved by catastrophic floods, but meandering rivers that flowed steadily for long periods, cutting their way through rock grain by grain. Some of these valley networks stretch for hundreds of kilometers, fed by rainfall from clouds that formed in Mars's ancient atmosphere. The patterns are unmistakable to geologists, the signature of a hydrological cycle like Earth's, where water evaporates from lakes and oceans, forms clouds, falls as rain or snow, and flows back to the lowlands in rivers. Let your breath match the rhythm of that ancient cycle now. Evaporation, rising, condensation, forming clouds, precipitation, falling, collection and flow, returning to the sea. In and out, up and down, the circulation that makes a world alive with liquid motion. How long did this cycle operate on Mars? The evidence suggests hundreds of millions of years, at minimum, perhaps as long as 500 million years or more, a stretch of time almost impossible to comprehend. On Earth, that's enough time for life to evolve from simple cells to complex multicellular organisms to develop photosynthesis to fundamentally transform a planet's atmosphere. What could happen on Mars in 500 million years of liquid water, stable lakes, flowing rivers? The question hangs in the air like mist over those ancient waterways. Consider another water story written in Martian stone, the story of Jezero Crater, where the Perseverance rover now explores. Jezero was chosen as a landing site precisely because of its water history. 3.5 billion years ago, rivers flowed into Jezero, creating a delta where the flowing water slowed and deposited its sediment load. Deltas are precious in planetary science because they concentrate organic material, if any exists. On Earth, river deltas are rich ecosystems, places where life thrives in abundance. If life existed in the rivers or lakes of ancient Mars, a delta would be one of the best places to find evidence of it. Perseverance is exploring this ancient delta now, drilling cores from rocks that formed in those river deposits, carefully storing them for a future mission that will bring them back to Earth. Each core is a time capsule, preserving chemistry and possibly biology from an era when Mars was a water world. The rover has found rocks that clearly formed underwater sedimentary deposits that show crossbedding, the telltale pattern created when sediments settle through flowing water. It's found rounded pebbles, cobbles smoothed by tumbling in streams. It's found clay minerals that require prolonged exposure to water to form. Every discovery adds another sentence to the story of Martian water, another detail to our understanding of this world's wet past. But the water story doesn't end with lakes and rivers. There's also the question of the Northern Ocean, that vast body of water we imagined in earlier chapters. The evidence for this ocean comes from multiple sources: the smooth northern lowlands that look like ancient seabeds, shoreline features at consistent elevations around the northern plains, and the detection of subsurface ice deposits that might be remnants of that ancient sea, frozen into the ground when the atmosphere thinned and temperatures dropped. If this ocean existed, and increasingly scientists think it did, then Mars once had a true water cycle on a planetary scale. Water evaporating from the ocean, blown by winds to the highlands, falling as rain or snow, flowing back to the sea in countless rivers, weather patterns, ocean currents, tides, storms, all the complexity that comes with a world of abundant water. Close your eyes and picture the sound of waves on an ancient Martian beach. Not the small lapping of a lake, but the rhythmic surge of ocean waves driven by wind across hundreds of kilometers of open water. The sound would be similar to Earth's oceans, but subtly different, pitched in the Martian scale under lower gravity beneath a different atmosphere. On the beach, rocks worn smooth by wave action, sand composed of eroded volcanic minerals, perhaps shells if life had evolved hard structures, though we have no evidence of this. The beach extends in both directions, curving with the shoreline around the northern hemisphere of Mars. Behind you, highlands rising toward the Martian south, their peaks perhaps capped with snow that melts in summer and feeds the rivers. Before you, the ocean extending to the horizon, its far shore too distant to see, somewhere in the vastness of the Borealis basin. Above, the sky might hold clouds, weather systems, driven by the temperature difference between equator and poles, between ocean and land. Perhaps rain falls from those clouds, drops of water that have cycled between ocean and atmosphere, countless times, carrying dissolved minerals, salts, the chemistry of a living planet. Let yourself float in this ancient ocean now, buoyant in its water, looking up at a Martian sky you'll never see with waking eyes. This is the realm of deep imagination, of scientific inference transformed into felt experience. The water holds you, neither too cold nor too warm, its gentle motion rocking you like a cosmic lullaby. Beneath the surface, in the depths, what might dwell? On Earth, life colonized the oceans early and thoroughly. Could Martian oceans have hosted their own ecosystems? Microbial communities forming mats on the seafloor, perhaps, or free-floating organisms drifting in the currents, harvesting energy from sunlight or from chemical reactions in the water. We're not likely to find fossils of such soft-bodied organisms if they existed. On Earth, most early life left no fossils, too simple and fragile to preserve, but they might have left chemical traces, signatures in the rocks that formed on the ancient seafloor, waiting for us to find and interpret them. The water story of Mars is also a story of loss, and there's a gentle melancholy in contemplating it. Over millions of years, the magnetic field died. The solar wind began stripping the atmosphere. The greenhouse effect weakened. Temperatures dropped. The water began its slow disappearance. First, the exposed water bodies would have started to freeze at night, thaw during the day. Then the freezing periods would lengthen. The ocean would develop ice sheets at its poles, growing thicker with each Martian winter, retreating less each summer. The rivers would flow only during brief warm periods, then not at all. Water that didn't freeze would evaporate, molecule by molecule, into the thinning atmosphere. And the atmosphere itself would be lost to space, carried away by the solar wind that Mars could no longer deflect. It's a slow death for a world taking millions of years, but inexorable. Any life that had arisen would have been forced to adapt, to migrate, to follow the retreating water underground or into protected pockets where liquid water could still exist. Or it would have gone extinct, leaving only traces in the rocks for future explorers to puzzle over. Let this loss flow through you without resistance, a sadness as gentle as autumn rain. Everything ends, even worlds. Mars's time as a water planet was finite, measured in hundreds of millions of years, long by human standards, but brief in cosmic time. The universe is full of endings, transformations, changes that erase what was and create something new in its place. Today, the water hasn't entirely vanished. It's hidden in ice caps at the poles, frozen into the soil as permafrost, perhaps pooled in liquid form in underground reservoirs, heated by the warmth of Mars's interior. Satellite observations have detected what might be a lake of liquid water beneath the southern ice cap, several kilometers down, kept liquid by pressure and possibly dissolved salts. If this subsurface water exists, could it harbor life even now? Organisms that retreated underground as the surface became uninhabitable, persisting in darkness for billions of years, waiting. On Earth, life exists deep underground in aquifers and caves, organisms that have never seen sunlight but nonetheless thrive. Why not on Mars? These are questions for future missions to answer. Drills that can reach the subsurface water, instruments that can detect signs of life if it exists. The search continues, patient as the rocks, methodical as science must be. But tonight, as you drift deeper towards sleep, let the water memory of Mars wash over you in images rather than facts. Let yourself feel the weight of 3.5 billion years of history, of rivers that flowed before Earth had forests, of oceans that rose and fell before Earth had any oceans at all. Water connects all life on Earth, and it might connect us to Mars as well. We're made mostly of water, our bodies walking oceans, carrying the chemistry of ancient seas in every cell. If life arose on Mars in its wet era, it too would have been a water-based chemistry, molecules dissolving and reacting in liquid medium, proteins folding in aqueous environments. We might be related, Martian life and Earth life, if both arose from the same chemistry, if the boundary between the two worlds was as porous as meteorite impacts suggest. We might be, in a sense, looking at our ancestral home when we look at Mars, the world where the first versions of our molecular machinery developed before being transferred to Earth. Or we might be entirely separate origins, two different experiments in life conducted by the universe in neighboring laboratories. But either way, water connects us, water that flows and freezes and evaporates and rains down, water that shapes worlds and enables life, water that remembers everything it touches. Rest now in that memory, in the sound of waves that stopped breaking billions of years ago, in the flow of rivers that carved valleys now dry and silent. The water of Mars exists still, frozen and hidden, waiting for the sun to brighten or for some future intervention to return it to the surface, to flow again in ancient channels, to fill old lake beds with new possibility. Your own water, the ocean inside you, circulates and flows with each heartbeat, each breath. You are a small echo of planetary water cycles, a microcosm of the larger rhythms that make worlds alive. As you breathe in and out, you participate in the ancient dance, the movement of liquid and gas, of dissolution and precipitation, of change and flow. Let that connection carry you deeper now, into waters more mysterious still, into the depths of sleep where dreams flow like underground rivers, where consciousness dissolves and reforms, where the boundaries between self and cosmos soften and blur. The water remembers, the rocks remember, Mars remembers in its silent way what it once was. And we remember too, or we try to, reading the memories written in ancient stone, reconstructing lost oceans from their dried beds, imagining rain on a world that no longer knows precipitation. Drift now on those ancient seas, under skies that exist now only in inference and imagination. The waves hold you, the water rocks you gently. The story continues, but you can release your hold on waking attention. Sleep is a kind of ocean too, and you're floating in it, safe and held, as the mysteries of Mars continue to unfold in dimensions beyond conscious awareness. The night deepens, the water flows in memory, and we move together into the next chapter, where different mysteries await. But for now, there's only the gentle rhythm, the rocking motion, the slow descent into deeper waters still. As you settle into the deeper rhythms of night, we turn our attention to the edges of perception, to those photographs from Mars that show formations making some observers pause, squint, look twice. These aren't the famous face on Mars, but countless smaller anomalies scattered across the red planet's surface, each one inviting interpretation, each one a puzzle that might be nothing or might be something more. Let yourself approach these mysteries with the gentle curiosity of twilight, where shapes are ambiguous, where shadows hold multiple meanings, where the mind is free to wonder without the harsh judgment of daylight skepticism. The rovers that explore Mars send back thousands upon thousands of images. Most show exactly what you'd expect: rocks, sand, distant hills, the familiar landscape of a desert world. But occasionally, rarely, an image contains something that looks out of place, something that makes pattern-seeking human minds take notice. There are rocks that seem too symmetrical, their edges too straight, their shapes too regular, to be easily explained by wind erosion alone. Some researchers have pointed to formations that appear cubic, with right angles and parallel sides, looking more like worked stone than natural rock. Picture one such formation now photographed by a rover sitting among other rocks in a Martian plain. Most of the rocks around it are irregular, rough-edged, clearly shaped by the random forces of nature. But this one is different. It has flat sides that meet at 90-degree angles, its edges are crisp, it sits upright, as if placed there rather than having fallen randomly. Is it artificial? Almost certainly not. Geologists can explain how certain minerals form cubic crystals, how rock layers can fracture along straight lines, how weathering can emphasize these natural geometries. The universe is full of symmetries that arise from physical laws without requiring conscious design. But the eye still catches on it. The mind still pauses, still asks, what if? Let yourself sit with that question without needing to answer it. In the borderland between sleep and waking, certainty becomes less important than wonder. What matters is not whether these formations are artificial, but what our reaction to them reveals about us, about our deep longing to find evidence of other minds in the cosmos. There are images from Mars that show what some observers call artifacts, small objects that look manufactured, a formation that resembles a wheel, a rock with what appears to be writing or symbols carved into its surface, shapes that suggest machinery, tools, fragments of structures. Each one, when examined closely by geologists and planetary scientists, reveals itself as almost certainly a natural formation photographed from an angle or in lighting that creates the illusion of artificiality. Pareidolia, again, are pattern-seeking minds doing what they do best, finding meaningful shapes in randomness. Yet the catalogue of these images grows. Some researchers have compiled hundreds of alleged anomalies from Mars, creating databases of unusual formations, arguing that the sheer number of them suggests at least some might be genuine artifacts of a lost civilization. Mainstream science dismisses most of these claims without detailed examination, pointing out that when you photograph millions of rocks in thousands of images, probability guarantees that some will look unusual purely by chance. If you took enough photographs of the Sahara Desert from orbit and from ground level, you'd find formations that looked artificial too, purely by statistical inevitability. But again, let yourself float in the space between explanation and mystery. Science's dismissal might be entirely correct, or it might occasionally miss something worth closer examination. The history of science includes many discoveries initially dismissed as impossible or misidentified. Close your eyes and imagine being a geologist on a future Mars mission, exploring a region where satellite images have revealed interesting formations. You arrive with your equipment, ready to investigate. Most of what you find confirms what you expected: natural rock formations, interesting in their own way, but clearly shaped by wind, sand abrasion, thermal expansion, and contraction, chemical weathering. But then you find something that gives you pause: a rock with a texture that doesn't quite match its surroundings, an arrangement of stones that seems too orderly, a depression in the ground with a regular shape. Nothing definitive, nothing that proves artificiality, but enough to make you wonder to take extra samples to photograph from multiple angles. Back on Earth, in laboratories, scientists analyze your samples. They find mineral compositions consistent with natural processes. They see crystal structures that formed through geological means. They measure isotopes that tell stories of age and formation. Everything points toward natural origin, but still, in the back of your mind, the question whispers, what if we're missing something? What if we're looking for the wrong kind of evidence? What if Martian artifacts wouldn't look like human artifacts, wouldn't be made of materials we'd recognize as manufactured? This is the space where science and imagination meet, where rigorous methodology encounters the vastness of cosmic possibility. Science must be conservative, demanding strong evidence before accepting extraordinary claims, but imagination must be free to explore possibilities that evidence hasn't yet confirmed or denied. Let your breath slow now, matching the patient wind, that shapes Mars's surface, grain by grain, year by year, millennium by millennium. That wind has been sculpting Mars for billions of years, creating endless varieties of rock shapes, erosion patterns, sand formations. In all that variety, some shapes will inevitably look artificial to human eyes, even if they're not. But could some actually be artificial? Could an ancient Martian civilization have left traces that we're misidentifying as natural formations because we don't know what to look for? Consider the pyramids of Egypt. From space, they're barely visible, small triangular shapes in the vast expanse of desert. If you didn't know they were there, if you were an alien scientist looking at satellite imagery of Earth without prior knowledge of human civilization, you might dismiss them as unusual hills, natural formations shaped by erosion. Now imagine those pyramids after 1,000,000 years of sand erosion, their smooth limestone facing stripped away, their precise angles worn by wind, half buried in dunes. How much longer until they're completely unrecognizable as artificial structures? Another 1,000,000 years? 10 million? At what point do artifacts become indistinguishable from the landscape, absorbed back into the geology they came from? Mars has been a dead world for perhaps 3 billion years, if it ever hosted civilization. 3 billion years of wind erosion, 3 billion years of temperature cycling, 3 billion years of cosmic radiation and micrometeorite impacts. How much would survive from a civilization that ended that long ago? Perhaps nothing. Perhaps even the Great Pyramids, the most durable structures humans have created, would be completely erased by 3 billion years of weathering. Perhaps any evidence of Martian civilization has been ground to dust and scattered by the patient wind. Or perhaps some traces remain, misidentified in our photographs, catalogued as unusual geological formations, waiting for someone with the right perspective or instruments to recognize them for what they are. Let yourself drift through these possibilities like a leaf on a stream, following the current without resistance. There's no need to believe or disbelieve, to affirm or deny. Simply float with the mystery, with the ambiguity, with the recognition that we know less than we think we know, that the universe is full of surprises, that our understanding is always provisional, always incomplete. Some of the most intriguing formations on Mars aren't anomalies in photographs, but features visible from orbit, large-scale patterns that some researchers argue show evidence of planning or design. There are crater patterns that some observers claim align in ways too regular to be random, arrangements of peaks or valleys that allegedly form geometric relationships, symmetries in the distribution of certain geological features that might indicate artificial modification of natural landforms. Again, mainstream planetary science can usually explain these patterns through natural processes, the physics of impact crater formation, the mechanics of volcanic activity, the patterns that emerge from tectonic stresses in planetary crusts. Nature creates patterns, sometimes striking ones, without requiring intelligence to guide the process. Crystals form with perfect geometric symmetry. Columnar basalt creates hexagonal pillars that look manufactured. Wave patterns on beaches form regular, parallel lines. The universe is full of order, emerging from simple physical laws, no consciousness required. But the researchers who study these Martian anomalies ask a fair question. If we found these same patterns on Earth, in regions where we knew ancient civilizations had existed, wouldn't we interpret at least some of them as artificial? Aren't we dismissing them on Mars partly because we've already decided Mars couldn't have hosted civilization? This is the challenge of exploration, maintaining scientific rigor while remaining open to unexpected discoveries, being skeptical without being closed-minded, demanding evidence while acknowledging that evidence can be subtle, easily overlooked, or misinterpreted. As you sink deeper into the night, let these questions dissolve like salt in water, becoming less distinct, more atmospheric. The specific formations don't matter as much as the larger contemplation they invite. How do we recognize intelligence when we encounter it? What counts as evidence of artificiality? How do we distinguish design from accident in a universe where physical laws create both? These are questions without simple answers, and that's appropriate for this hour of night when sleep approaches, when the mind naturally releases its grip on concrete certainties and drifts into more fluid ways of thinking. Picture Mars now not as a collection of specific features to analyze, but as a whole world, a sphere of dust and rock turning silently in the darkness of space. Across its surface, countless formations rise and fall, shaped by the patient work of time and physics. Most are clearly natural. Some look ambiguous to untrained eyes. A tiny fraction might be genuinely unusual, worth closer investigation. Future missions will examine some of these formations in person with instruments more sophisticated than we can deploy from orbit or with current rovers. Perhaps they'll find natural explanations for everything, confirming what most scientists already believe. Or perhaps they'll find something surprising, some formation that doesn't fit our models of natural processes, that demands a more complex explanation. Until then, we're left with photographs, data, and competing interpretations. The structures in shadow remain ambiguous Rorschach tests onto which we project our expectations, hopes, and assumptions about the universe and our place in it. And perhaps that ambiguity is valuable in its own right, not as a scientific question but as a philosophical one. The structures in shadow remind us that we see what we're prepared to see, that perception is as much about the observer as the observed, that the universe doesn't organize itself for our convenience into neat categories of natural and artificial, meaningful and random. Let your own perceptions soften now, your categories dissolve, your need for certainty release its hold. In the twilight state between waking and sleep, all structures exist in shadow, all shapes are ambiguous, all meanings multiple. This is the realm of dreams, where a rock might be a building, where a shadow might be a doorway, where the impossible and the ordinary coexist without contradiction. The night deepens around you. Mars continues its lonely orbit, carrying its mysteries with patient indifference to our speculation. Whether its rocks are just rocks or something more, they remain unchanged by our opinions, solid and real in ways that transcend our interpretation. And you, floating in this story, in this night, in this gentle descent towards sleep, need not solve these mysteries. You need only let them wash over you, these questions about structures and shadows, about what's real and what's imagined, about the thin line between pattern and pareidolia. Rest now in the not knowing, rest in the ambiguity. The universe is full of shadows and we're still learning what shapes within them. Some shadows hide nothing but more shadow. Others might conceal wonders we haven't yet learned to recognize. Either way, the night holds you. The darkness welcomes you, and the structures in shadow fade into the larger shadow of approaching sleep, where all mysteries find their resolution not in answers, but in the deep peace of letting go. Breathe with the Martian wind, shaping and eroding, creating and destroying, patient as eternity. In and out, shadow and light, mystery and rest. The journey continues, but your active attention can release now, can drift, can dissolve into the gentle current, carrying you deeper into the night. In the deepest part of night, when consciousness becomes most fluid, we turn to something that might seem unlikely: mathematics. But not the harsh arithmetic of daylight, not the demanding calculations of engineering. Instead, we explore mathematics as a kind of music, a language that describes patterns in nature, relationships between cosmic forces, the hidden harmonies that structure reality itself. Let these ideas flow over you like water, not requiring your full attention. Simply present like a gentle stream murmuring in the background of awareness. When researchers study the possibility of ancient Martian civilization, some look for mathematical signatures in the landscape, ratios and relationships that might indicate design rather than accident. This approach has precedent in archaeology on Earth, where mathematical analysis has helped identify artificial structures and planned layouts in ancient cities. The golden ratio, approximately 1.618, appears throughout nature. In the spiral of nautilus shells, the arrangement of seeds in sunflowers, the proportions of the human body. Some ancient civilizations incorporated this ratio into their architecture, perhaps recognizing its aesthetic appeal or mathematical properties. Researchers analyzing certain Martian formations have claimed to find this ratio in the relationships between features, in the proportions of alleged structures, in the spacing of unusual landforms. To skeptics, this is data mining, finding patterns in random numbers by looking hard enough. To proponents, it suggests planning, intention, design. Let yourself float in the space between these interpretations, not judging, simply observing how mathematics can be a language that means different things to different readers. Consider the great cycles that govern planetary existence. Mars takes 687 Earth days to orbit the Sun, nearly twice Earth's year. Its day, called a sol, lasts 24 hours and 37 minutes, remarkably close to Earth's rotation period. Its axial tilt is similar to Earth's, giving Mars seasons like ours, though twice as long. These are the rhythms that would have structured life on ancient Mars if life existed there. The seasons turning through their long cycle, the daily rotation creating patterns of light and shadow, the orbital dance with the Sun governing the deeper climate cycles. Any civilization arising on Mars would have noticed these patterns, measured them, incorporated them into calendars and predictions. The mathematics of celestial mechanics would have been as important to them as it was to ancient human astronomers, who tracked planetary motions and developed sophisticated models of celestial movement. Did Martian astronomers once track Earth as we now track Mars? Did they notice the small blue-white star that appeared in their evening and morning sky, wandering among the fixed constellations? Did they puzzle over its movements, calculate its orbital period, wonder if it might harbor life? The thought creates a poignant symmetry. Two worlds, neighbors in the same solar system, potentially both hosting conscious beings who looked at each other across the void, wondering, dreaming, hoping for contact that never came, because they existed in different epochs, separated by billions of years of cosmic time. Let your breath slow to match the patient turning of planets, the rhythm of orbits that continue unchanged whether witnessed or not. In and out, like the approach and retreat of Mars from Earth in our sky, sometimes close and bright, sometimes distant and dim, but always following the same mathematical pattern, the same orbital mechanics that govern all worlds. Mathematics describes not just the motion of planets, but the flow of water, the erosion of rock, the formation of minerals. Physical laws expressed in equations determine how rivers carve valleys, how wind shapes dunes, how crystals grow in regular patterns. These same laws would have governed ancient Mars, creating similar patterns to those we see on Earth, but under different conditions. Lower gravity, different atmospheric pressure, different temperature ranges. A river on Mars would have flowed differently than an Earth river, carving different channel shapes, creating different erosion patterns, but still following mathematical principles that apply universally. Could we distinguish through mathematical analysis between a Mars river valley shaped purely by natural processes and one modified by intelligence? Perhaps if the modifications were significant enough, if they created patterns that violated the usual mathematical relationships between slope, discharge, sediment size, and channel shape. Archaeologists on Earth use such analysis to identify ancient canals and modified waterways to distinguish natural rivers from artificial channels. The same techniques might work on Mars if ancient Martians had altered their environment, redirected rivers, built dams or reservoirs, engineered their landscape. But the analysis requires careful study of specific sites, detailed measurements, understanding of local conditions. From orbital imagery alone, with limited data, definitive conclusions remain elusive. The mathematics can suggest possibilities, but rarely provide proof. As you drift deeper into the night, let the specific details fade, retaining only the sense of mathematics as a tool for understanding, a language spoken by the universe itself, describing relationships and patterns, whether or not conscious minds are present to observe them. There's something deeply soothing about mathematical regularity, about patterns that repeat, about ratios that hold constant across different scales. The universe follows rules, exhibits order, behaves predictably within certain parameters. This reliability allows life to exist, allows complexity to build on simple foundations, allows worlds to remain stable enough for evolution to work its patient magic. Even in randomness, mathematics finds pattern. Statistical distributions describe how random processes behave in aggregate. Chaos theory reveals hidden order in systems that appear completely disordered. Fractals show how simple rules can generate infinite complexity, patterns that look similar at every scale of magnification. Could Martian wind erosion create fractal patterns? Could the distribution of craters follow mathematical laws? Could the arrangement of geological features exhibit statistical properties that distinguish them from truly random placement? These questions exist at the frontier of planetary science, where mathematics meets geology, where analysis technique meets the reality of limited data from a distant world. The answers will come slowly, requiring more missions, better instruments, patient analysis by scientists who understand both the power and limitations of mathematical approaches. Let these thoughts dissolve now like fog in morning sunlight, though for you morning is still hours away, and this moment exists in the deep middle of night where time becomes less linear, more cyclical, measured not by clocks but by the rhythm of breath and heartbeat. The mathematics of lost worlds includes not just spatial patterns but temporal ones, the deep time across which planets evolve, civilizations rise and fall, stars are born and die. On these timescales, measured in millions and billions of years, individual lives become invisible, even individual species barely register. Yet the mathematical patterns persist, governing change with patient indifference to particular outcomes. If Mars once hosted civilization, its rise and fall would be a brief chapter in the planet's longer story, perhaps occupying only tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of years out of billions. A fraction of a percent of Martian history, easily missed if we don't look at exactly the right geological layer, easily erased by billions of years of subsequent weathering. The mathematics of probability suggests that if intelligent life commonly arises given the right conditions, then many civilizations have likely existed throughout the universe's history, most separated from each other by vast distances or vast stretches of time, few if any overlapping enough to make contact. We might live in a universe full of the ruins of civilizations, worlds that once sang with intelligence but now sit silent. Their songs ended millions or billions of years ago, their artifacts eroded to nothing, their only legacy perhaps the altered chemistry of their atmosphere or subtle changes in their planet's geology. This is both a lonely and a comforting thought. Lonely because it suggests we might never find living companions among the stars, that consciousness might be common, but connectedness rare. Comforting because it suggests we're not alone in the larger cosmic story, that intelligence has arisen many times, will likely arise many times more. That consciousness is a natural flowering of matter under the right conditions. Let these vast perspectives wash over you without creating anxiety or existential weight. They're too large for individual human emotion, existing instead in the realm of pure contemplation, intellectual appreciation of scale, without personal investment in specific outcomes. Your breath continues its steady rhythm, not counted or measured, simply happening with mathematical regularity, a physical process governed by the same laws that govern stars and planets, rivers and winds. You're made of mathematics, in a sense, your body a collection of systems following physical and chemical rules, creating the emergent property we call life, consciousness, self-awareness. The same might be true of any Martian life that arose, built from different chemistry perhaps, but following the same fundamental mathematics, the same physical laws that apply throughout the universe. If we could meet an ancient Martian, we might discover that despite all surface differences, we share something fundamental: existence as complex patterns maintaining ourselves against entropy, consciousness as information processing itself into awareness. These are late-night thoughts, the kind that arise when the mind loosens its grip on practical concerns and drifts into philosophical territory. They're not provable or refutable, existing instead as perspectives, ways of framing existence that might or might not resonate with your deeper understanding. Let them drift through like clouds across a night sky, present and then absent, leaving no trace except perhaps a lingering sense of connection to something larger than individual identity, some pattern or rhythm that includes but transcends personal existence. The mathematics of lost worlds resolves not into equations or proofs, but into this feeling, this sense of participation in cycles larger than comprehension, patterns that continue whether or not we understand them, regularities that structure reality at every scale from quantum to cosmic. Mars participates in these patterns, a world following the mathematics of planetary evolution, cooling and freezing according to physical laws, shaped by the same forces that will eventually reshape Earth, given enough time. The lost civilization, if it existed, would have been another pattern, a temporary complexity that arose, flourished briefly, and dissolved back into simpler arrangements of matter and energy. Nothing is permanent except change itself, which follows mathematical curves of growth and decay, flourishing and fading, presence and absence. Even mountains erode, even stars burn out, even the universe itself, according to some cosmological models, will eventually wind down into maximum entropy, a state of complete disorder from which no further change is possible. But that's billions of trillions of years away, time frames so vast as to be meaningless to human consciousness. For now, in this moment, in this night, the universe continues its ordered dance. Planets orbit, rivers would flow if Mars still had rivers, and consciousness observes, wonders, contemplates its own existence and the existence of others who might have come before. Rest now in that contemplation, not as active thinking but as a kind of background awareness, like music playing softly in another room. The mathematics continues whether you attend to it or not, patterns unfolding according to rules that existed before minds emerged to understand them, and will continue after all minds have faded. You're cradled in these patterns, supported by physical laws that keep your body functioning, your breath flowing, your heart beating. The same laws that hold planets in their orbits and govern the slow erosion of Martian mountains also maintain the intricate chemistry that is you, that is life, that is consciousness contemplating itself. Let the numbers fade to impressions, the equations dissolve to feelings, the mathematical precision soften into the approximate knowing of dreams. In sleep, the mind works with different mathematics, associative rather than logical, symbolic rather than literal, creating narratives that ignore waking rules but follow their own deeper patterns. You're approaching that threshold now, the border between mathematics and dream, between structured thinking and free association. The lost worlds of Mars become less specific, more archetypal, representing not just one planet's possible history, but the universal story of a rising and passing, complexity emerging from simplicity and eventually returning to it. The cycles continue, vast and slow, indifferent to individual observation but somehow more beautiful, for that indifference. They need nothing from us, these cosmic patterns, these mathematical certainties. They simply are, have been, will be, following trajectories set in motion at the universe's beginning. And within these grand cycles, smaller rhythms nest like Russian dolls, each contained within the next. The orbit of Mars around the Sun, the rotation of Mars creating day and night, the seasonal cycles as the planet tilts toward and away from solar warmth, and smaller still, the cycles that would have governed any life that arose there. If that life achieved consciousness, it too would have noticed these patterns, found meaning in them, perhaps built civilizations that harmonized with cosmic rhythms or tried to transcend them. The mathematics would have been the same, universal and unchanging, but the meanings assigned to those patterns would have been unique to Martian minds, assuming minds arose at all. We'll never know what mathematics meant to vanished Martians, what aesthetic or spiritual significance they might have found in ratios and rhythms, what equations they might have carved in stone or encoded in monuments, if monuments they built. These are mysteries compounded by mysteries, questions that may have no answers, because the civilization we're imagining might never have existed. But the contemplation itself has value, teaching us something about how we think, what we seek, why mathematics and pattern recognition feel meaningful to conscious minds. We're the universe trying to understand itself, using mathematical tools to decode patterns in our own structure and the structures around us. As you release conscious attention now, sinking deeper into sleep's approach, the mathematics becomes purely intuitive, felt rather than calculated. The rhythm of breath, the pulse of blood, the wave patterns of brain activity, all following mathematical rules at levels below conscious awareness. You're a living equation solving yourself moment by moment, maintaining balance, processing information, existing as a localized decrease in entropy, while the universe around you tends toward disorder. Life itself is a mathematical impossibility that happens anyway. Consciousness, an emergent property so unlikely and yet so inevitable given the right conditions that it feels like both accident and destiny. These paradoxes need not be resolved, only experienced, only accepted as part of the strange beauty of existence in a mathematical universe. The numbers don't need to add up to anything in particular. The patterns don't require ultimate meaning, they simply are, and that isness is enough. Mars taught us this perhaps with its patient refusal to give us easy answers, its ambiguous evidence, its hints and suggestions that never quite coalesce into proof. The mathematics of Mars describes a world, but whether that world once hosted consciousness similar to ours remains an open equation, unsolved, possibly unsolvable, with current information. And maybe that's appropriate. Maybe the universe doesn't owe us certainty, only the opportunity to look, to wonder, to calculate probabilities without ever achieving complete knowledge. Maybe the mathematics of lost worlds is ultimately about accepting limits, acknowledging what we cannot know, finding peace in the approximations and estimates that are all finite minds can achieve when contemplating infinite questions. Let that peace settle over you now like a soft blanket, warm and weightless. The mathematics continues in the background, your body solving countless equations of chemistry and physics to keep you alive, your brain processing patterns even in sleep, but you need not pay attention to any of it. The work happens automatically, following rules established billions of years ago when matter first organized itself into complex patterns, when chemistry became biology, when processing became awareness. You're the beneficiary of all that ancient mathematics, that patient working out of problems through trial and error across geological time. Mars might have been the first place in our solar system where those equations got solved, where matter became life, became mind. Or maybe Earth was first, or maybe both planets achieved it independently, parallel experiments in consciousness conducted by an unconscious universe following mathematical rules that somehow produce minds capable of understanding those rules. The circularity is dizzying if you think about it directly, but Here in the twilight of consciousness, it's simply beautiful, a strange loop where the universe folds back on itself, matter contemplating matter, patterns recognizing patterns, mathematics describing mathematics. You're part of that loop, that strange reflexivity, consciousness arising from unconscious processes, awareness emerging from unaware matter, meaning created by minds from a cosmos that contains no inherent meaning beyond the meanings we generate. And if Martian minds once did the same, they participated in the same cosmic work, adding their meanings to the universe, their interpretations of the mathematics, their answers to questions about purpose and pattern, existence and consciousness. Those answers, if they existed, are lost now, erased by time and wind and the patient erosion that returns all complexity to simplicity, all patterns to randomness, all information to noise. The mathematics that describes this process is called entropy, and it's as fundamental as any law in physics, the universal tendency toward disorder that only life and consciousness temporarily resist. But the resistance is real, even if temporary. For billions of years, Earth has resisted entropy, maintaining and even increasing complexity, building ecosystems and eventually civilizations from simple chemical beginnings. Mars may have done the same for millions of years before the conditions that allowed resistance changed, leaving life and mind with nowhere to persist. These thoughts drift and scatter now, becoming less coherent, more dreamlike. The mathematics fades into feeling, the logic dissolves into image, and you're no longer thinking about lost worlds so much as dreaming them. And in dreams, different rules apply, or no rules at all, or rules that change moment to moment. This is as it should be, the natural progression from waking thought to sleep's strange territories. The mathematics of consciousness includes this transition, brain waves shifting in frequency, neural networks moving from focused processing to more diffuse, associative activity. You're safe in this transition, held by the same physical laws that hold planets in their courses. Gravity keeps you pressed gently against whatever surface supports you. Electromagnetic forces hold your atoms together. Nuclear forces bind your very nuclei. You're embedded in mathematics at every level, from quantum to cosmic, all of it working together to maintain your existence. And as you fade into sleep, that work continues, equations solving themselves without your attention, your body breathing for you, your heart beating in rhythm, your cells doing their chemical work, all of it mathematical, all of it following rules, all of it creating the miracle of continued existence. The lost worlds of Mars can rest now, and so can you. The mathematics will be there tomorrow, the patterns persistent, the questions patient. For now, only sleep matters, only rest, only the surrender to unconsciousness that every biological system requires. Let the numbers fade to silence. Let the equations dissolve to darkness. Let the mathematics of lost worlds become the mathematics of letting go, of releasing, of trusting the automatic processes that sustain you while consciousness retreats. The night holds you in its own equation, a balance of darkness and warmth, silence and the soft sounds of night, presence and absence blending into the liminal state that precedes true sleep. And in that state, Mars becomes a memory, civilization becomes a dream, and mathematics becomes simply the rhythm of breath, counting itself down toward zero awareness, toward the peaceful blank of deep sleep where no thoughts disturb, no questions press, no mysteries demand attention. Rest in the mathematics of being, the simple equation of existence that requires nothing from you but permission to continue, trust in the process, release of control. The answer to every question is, for now, simply sleep. And so you do. So you do. In the heart of deepest night, when most who listen have already drifted beyond waking shores, we move through the Martian landscape with the slowness of wind, the patience of dust accumulating grain by grain across eons. You need not hold on to these words. They're here simply as companions to the darkness, soft presences in the space around sleep, requiring nothing, offering only the gentlest of drifts through ideas that float like dust in slanting light. Picture dust on Mars, infinitely fine particles of iron oxide giving the planet its russet hue. This dust is everywhere, coating every surface, filling every hollow, drifting on winds that still blow though the atmosphere is thin, painting the sky its distinctive pink. Each particle of this dust is ancient beyond imagining, weathered from rocks over billions of years, ground down by wind and temperature changes, oxidized by the trace oxygen in the atmosphere. These particles have been airborne and settled countless times, traveling across the planet in the great dust storms that occasionally envelop the entire world. What has this dust witnessed? If you could read the history recorded in a single grain, what stories might it tell? Perhaps it was once part of a volcanic rock crystallized from magma 4 billion years ago when Mars was young and geologically active. Perhaps it sat in that rock for millions of years before erosion began to wear it away, temperature cycles causing the rock to crack, wind exploiting those cracks, grain by grain, liberating particles. Once free, our particle enters the Martian winds, blown across plains, up mountain slopes into craters, and out again. It might settle for centuries in a protected hollow, then be picked up by a dust devil and carried hundreds of kilometers. It might be among the particles that create the planet-wide dust storms, blocking sunlight, causing temperatures to shift, changing weather patterns for months. Through all this, the particle exists without memory, without experience, simply following physical laws. But if we imagine it could remember, what moments might stand out in its billions of years of existence? Perhaps there was a time when it settled into flowing water, joining sediments that accumulated in an ancient lake bed. For millions of years it rested there, covered by later layers, compressed, becoming part of sedimentary rock. Then later, much later, erosion exposed that rock again, weathered it, freed the particle to once more drift on the wind. Or perhaps the particle once settled on the leaf of a Martian plant, if plants ever grew on Mars. It might have been one of countless grains coating photosynthetic surfaces, eventually being washed off by rain into a stream, carried to the sea, settling on the ocean floor. These are imagined histories, possibilities we'll never confirm, but they're soothing to contemplate in the quiet hours. Each particle of Martian dust could tell a story if particles could speak, a narrative spanning the entire history of the planet, witnessing transformations and changes we can only infer from evidence. Let yourself become dust for a moment, not in any morbid sense, but as an imaginative exercise, releasing the boundaries of self, dispersing into the environment, experiencing existence without consciousness or intention, simply moving as physical forces direct, settling and rising in rhythms determined by wind and gravity. There's something restful in this image, in releasing agency, in being moved rather than moving, in flowing with forces larger than choice. The dust doesn't resist the wind, it goes where blown, settles where it may, rises again when conditions shift. The rovers exploring Mars become coated in this dust, their solar panels accumulating layers that reduce power generation. Occasionally, a dust devil passes by, its vortex winds lifting the dust away, cleaning the panels, extending the rover's operational life. This has happened several times, moments of unexpected fortune, the Martian environment inadvertently helping the machines we've sent to study it. Imagine being Opportunity, the rover that operated for nearly 15 years, far beyond its planned 90-day mission. Imagine the dust settling on you day after day, dimming your power, threatening to end your operation. Then the brush of a passing dust devil, your panels suddenly cleaner, power rising, life extended. The dust gives and the dust takes away, coating and cleaning in unpredictable cycles, following the chaotic dynamics of Martian meteorology, impossible to predict but inevitable in aggregate. Some rovers will be cleaned by dust devils, others won't, and there's no way to know in advance which fate awaits. Eventually, all the rovers will be silenced, their systems failing, their last transmission sent, their bodies becoming permanent features of the Martian landscape. Over time, they too will be buried by dust, covered grain by grain, until they're hidden beneath the surface, becoming artifacts of human exploration, waiting for some future archaeologist to uncover. In billions of years, when our own civilization is long gone, those rovers might still exist in some form, buried under layers of dust and sediment, their metals corroded but perhaps recognizable, their nuclear power sources decayed but detectable. There'll be time capsules then, evidence that intelligence once existed on Earth, that consciousness reached out from one world to touch another. Just as we search for evidence of ancient Martian civilization, future explorers might find evidence of ours preserved in the very rovers we sent to search for other civilizations. The irony is gentle, the symmetry pleasing to contemplate in this quiet hour. The dust continues its work, coating and covering, erasing and preserving simultaneously. Some features become hidden, others emerge as overlying layers erode away. The surface of Mars is a palimpsest, layers of history written over each other, visible and invisible, present and past, existing together in different strata. Core samples taken from Martian soil contain layers, each representing a different era of deposition, different environmental conditions, different chemical compositions. Reading these layers is like reading tree rings or ice cores on Earth, each stratum a chapter in planetary history. If ancient Martian civilization existed, evidence of it might exist in these layers, compressed and preserved beneath millions of years of later deposition. Chemical signatures of industrial activity, elevated concentrations of certain elements, isotopic ratios that suggest artificial rather than natural processes. Or perhaps their artifacts lie not buried but exposed on the surface, misidentified as natural formations, waiting for the right analysis or perspective to reveal their true nature. The dust covering them obscures details, makes identification harder, protects them from cosmic radiation but also from discovery. Let these possibilities drift through awareness without urgency, like the dust itself drifting on Martian winds. There's no need to reach conclusions, to decide what's likely or unlikely. In this deep hour, all possibilities exist in superposition, not yet collapsed by the observation of daylight clarity. The dust devils dance across the plains, visible in rover images as dark trails where they've lifted the lighter-colored surface dust, revealing darker soil beneath. These devils form from temperature differentials, warm ground heating cold air, creating vortices that can travel for kilometers before dissipating. Are they entirely natural phenomena, or might ancient Martians have noticed them, given them names, incorporated them into mythology? Did Martian children watch dust devils with the same fascination Earth children feel for whirlwinds and twisters? Did Martian artists try to capture their ethereal motion, their appearance of intention and personality, despite being purely physical processes? These questions have no answers, but asking them connects us to the universal aspects of consciousness, the tendency to see patterns, to anthropomorphize natural phenomena, to create stories that explain and entertain. If Martian minds arose, they likely shared these tendencies, these cognitive habits that seem intrinsic to how awareness relates to environment. The dust knows nothing of these speculations. It continues its ancient work, settling and rising, coating and cleaning, gradually wearing down mountains, gradually filling craters, patient as geology, indifferent as entropy. Under this blanket of dust, what lies hidden? What formed landscapes exist beneath the layers, preserved by the very process that conceals them? What valleys and hills, what dry lake beds and ancient shorelines, what possible artifacts and structures wait beneath the russet covering? Future missions might drill deep enough to find out, might core through layers of dust to the underlying rock, to the preserved surfaces that haven't seen sunlight for millions or billions of years. What they'll find remains speculation, but the drilling will happen, the cores will be analyzed, and gradually we'll read deeper into the book of Martian history. For now, though, the dust keeps its secrets, and we keep our questions. And between the two lies the space of possibility, of patience, of waiting for evidence to emerge from the veiled landscape. Let your own thoughts become like dust now, individual particles of awareness settling and dispersing, no longer forming coherent structures, but simply drifting in the space of mind, lighter than attention can track, present but not demanding notice. The whispers in the dust are perhaps just the sound of wind-moving particles, no more meaning than grains rasping against each other or settling into new configurations. Or perhaps, in some poetic sense, they're the memories of a world, encoded not in any readable form, but in the simple fact of existence, of matter persisting through time, of a planet continuing to be despite all the changes it's undergone. You're approaching the deepest part of sleep now if you haven't already arrived there. These words reach you from far away, from the shore of consciousness to wherever you drift beyond it. They require nothing from you, no comprehension, no memory, only the most minimal awareness that language continues, that the journey goes on whether you witness it or not. The dust settles on these words too, coating them in the softest of silences, making them harder to distinguish from the background of night. Soon, perhaps, they'll be entirely obscured, and only the rhythm will remain, the gentle pulse of language creating space rather than meaning. Rest in that rhythm, rest in the settling dust, rest in the knowledge that Mars continues its patient existence, that dust continues its ancient work, that mysteries remain to be solved, but not tonight, not now, not in this moment of deep repose. The whispers fade to silence, the dust settles to stillness, and in that stillness, perfect and complete, there is only the peace of darkness, the comfort of not needing to know, the gift of questions that can wait until light returns. For now, only rest, only sleep, only the soft descent into unconsciousness where no dust blows and no whispers disturb the perfect quiet of being without awareness, existing without effort. Sleep, gentle listener. Sleep. In the deep middle of this long night, we drift through time itself, through the great cycles that govern worlds, the rhythms that determine the rise and fall of climates, atmospheres, civilizations. These are slow rhythms measured not in heartbeats or breath, but in millennia and eons, in the gradual precession of planetary axes, in the slow wobble of orbital inclinations, in changes so gradual that no single lifetime could perceive them, yet so consequential that they reshape worlds entirely. Mars follows these rhythms still. Its axial tilt, currently about 25 degrees, varies dramatically over time periods of hundreds of thousands of years. At times, Mars has tilted more than 60 degrees, its poles nearly pointing toward the Sun, creating climates radically different from what we observe today. Picture Mars during a period of extreme axial tilt. The poles receive direct sunlight for long portions of the year, causing the ice caps to partially sublimate, releasing water vapor into the atmosphere. The atmosphere thickens temporarily. Temperatures rise. Perhaps liquid water can exist again, if only briefly, if only in protected locations. Then the cycle reverses, the tilt decreases, the poles freeze more thoroughly, the atmosphere thins again, the brief wet period ends, and Mars returns to the cold, dry desert we know. These cycles repeat endlessly, driven by gravitational interactions with other planets, particularly Jupiter, whose massive presence perturbs the orbits of inner planets, causing slow variations in their orbital parameters. Earth experiences similar cycles, though much less extreme because our large moon stabilizes our axial tilt, preventing the wild variations that Mars undergoes. But even Earth has cycles, the Milankovitch cycles that contribute to ice ages and interglacial periods, the slow changes in orbital eccentricity, axial tilt, and precession that alter how sunlight distributes across seasons and latitudes. Let yourself feel these rhythms now, not as intellectual concepts, but as the deep pulse of planetary existence, the slow breathing of worlds through different climate states, warm and cold, wet and dry, over timescales that dwarf human history entirely. If civilization arose on Mars during its wet period, it would have faced the reality of these cycles. As the atmosphere began to thin, as temperatures dropped, as water became scarcer, Martian societies would have needed to adapt or perish. Perhaps they migrated toward the equator, where warmth lasted longer. Perhaps they developed technologies to create enclosed environments, artificial atmospheres. Perhaps they moved underground, following the water into subsurface aquifers, building cities in caves and lava tubes, maintaining civilization in darkness while the surface became uninhabitable. Or perhaps they lacked the technology or time to adapt. Perhaps the changes came too quickly, or their civilization was too young, too fragile to respond to planetary-scale environmental catastrophe. Perhaps they watched their world die, knowing what was happening but unable to stop it, recording their extinction in monuments or messages we haven't yet found. These are somber thoughts, but appropriate for this hour when darkness reigns and sleep claims most minds. The cycles of worlds include endings as surely as beginnings, failures as certainly as successes. Nothing lasts forever, not civilizations, not species, not even worlds remain habitable indefinitely. Earth too will face such endings. In about 1 billion years, the sun's increasing luminosity will trigger a runaway greenhouse effect, boiling away Earth's oceans, rendering the surface lifeless. Long before that, other challenges will arise. The sun's gradual changes, plate tectonics eventually slowing or stopping, the core cooling, the magnetic field weakening. Nothing in the cosmos comes with guarantees of permanence. The cycles that create also destroy, and the same patient forces that built hospitable worlds will eventually make them inhospitable again. But between beginning and ending lies the middle, the long plateau of existence where life can flourish, where complexity can build, where consciousness can emerge and contemplate itself and the universe around it. Mars might have had hundreds of millions of years of such flourishing. Earth has had billions and might have billions more, though the exact time frames remain uncertain. These vast stretches of time make human existence seem infinitesimal, our entire recorded history a mere blink in the planetary story. And yet in that blink, we've developed science, built civilizations, sent machines to explore other worlds. The brevity doesn't negate the significance, or perhaps the significance lies precisely in the achievement of so much in so little time. If Martian civilization existed, it too would have had its brief season, its moment in cosmic history. Perhaps they achieved more than we have, had more time, reached further into their solar system. Or perhaps they never got as far as we have, their civilization ending before they developed space travel, before they could escape their dying world. We'll likely never know, and in this deep night, that unknowing feels appropriate. The universe doesn't arrange itself for our narrative convenience. It operates according to physical laws indifferent to storytelling needs. Some questions remain forever unanswered, some mysteries never resolved. Let yourself sink into that acceptance, that peace with not knowing, with the recognition that the cycles continue whether we understand them or not, whether we witness them or not. Your own body follows cycles too, rhythms nested within larger rhythms. The circadian cycle of roughly 24 hours, governed by biological clocks that respond to light and darkness. The ultradian rhythms of sleep, cycling through different stages approximately every 90 minutes. The slower rhythms of hunger, cellular regeneration, hormone production. You're a collection of cycles, rhythms within rhythms, all of them ultimately derived from the rotation of your planet, the orbit around your star, the gravitational dance of your moon. You're embedded in cosmic rhythms at every level of your being. Mars would have imposed different rhythms on any life that arose there. The slightly longer day, the year twice as long as Earth's, the chaotic variations in axial tilt, creating climate changes no single organism could adapt to, requiring evolutionary flexibility or technological intervention. Perhaps Martian life developed different circadian rhythms calibrated to the 24-hour and 37-minute sol. Perhaps their sleep cycles differed, their daily energy patterns arranged differently. Perhaps consciousness itself had a different temporal texture, a different sense of time's passage. These are idle speculations, dreams more than theories, but here in the heart of night they're worth contemplating gently, ways of imagining how different physical conditions might produce different subjective experiences, how the cycles of worlds might shape the cycles of minds. The seasons on Mars last nearly twice as long as Earth seasons. Spring on Mars spans 7 months of Earth time, summer 6 months, autumn 5.5 months, winter only 4 months, because Mars's elliptical orbit means it moves faster through the part of its orbit that corresponds to southern winter. Did Martian life evolve to match these rhythms? Did plants, if they existed, follow growth and dormancy cycles matched to these long seasons? Did migrating animals, if any arose, travel between summer and winter, feeding grounds on journeys that took months? Did civilizations, if they emerged, organize their calendars around these seasons, develop festivals and observances tied to solstices and equinoxes, create mythologies about the turning of the year, just as human cultures have done? The parallels would be inevitable, the same astronomical realities producing similar cultural responses, consciousness everywhere reaching toward the same need to mark time's passage, to divide the year into meaningful segments, to celebrate transitions and transformations. Let these imagined parallels connect you to the universal aspects of conscious experience, the ways that awareness confronts time and seeks to organize it, to make it manageable through division and naming, through ritual and celebration. Your own species emerged from ancestors who tracked seasons carefully, knowing when to plant and harvest, when to expect rains, when game animals would be available. This seasonal awareness is built into human consciousness, even now, when most people live in climate-controlled environments and buy food that's available year-round. You still feel something when seasons change, some stirring that goes beyond rational response to temperature shifts. Spring brings a sense of renewal, of possibility. Autumn carries a note of melancholy, of preparation for scarcity. These responses are ancient, coded into your being by millions of years of ancestors for whom seasonal changes meant survival or death. Martian minds might have felt similar resonances, their consciousness shaped by the cycles of their world, by the long seasons and the deep climate changes that operated on even longer timescales. They might have developed philosophies about impermanence, about adaptation, about the inevitability of change, their thought systems reflecting the reality of their unstable planet. Or perhaps they developed technologies that freed them from these cycles, artificial environments that maintained constant conditions, breaking the connection between consciousness and planetary rhythms. But even then, the memory would remain encoded in their evolutionary history, surfacing in nostalgia or dreams, in the psychological need for variety and change, even when physical circumstances remain stable. These thoughts drift and merge, becoming less distinct, more impressionistic. The cycles continue their slow turning, indifferent to speculation about Martian minds. Mars orbits the Sun, rotating on its axis, its axial tilt slowly precessing, its climate parameters changing across vast timescales, all of it determined by physics, by mathematics, by the inexorable working out of gravitational equations. And you drift too through your own cycles, through the progression from waking to drowsing to light sleep to deep sleep and back again, following patterns set by biology, by evolution, by the needs of a brain that must periodically enter unconsciousness to perform necessary maintenance, to consolidate memories, to restore neurochemical balances. The cycles of worlds and the cycles of consciousness mirror each other in this way, both following rhythms established by physical necessity, both creating through repetition a sense of structure, of time having shape rather than being formless flow. Rest in these rhythms, rest in the cycling, rest in the knowledge that you're part of patterns larger than individual existence, that your life participates in the deep rhythms of planetary existence, whether you're aware of that participation or not. The night continues its own cycle, the earth turning toward dawn, though dawn is still hours away for you. Somewhere it's already daylight. Somewhere else night is just beginning. The planet cycles through light and darkness, and you cycle through consciousness and sleep, and Mars cycles through its own longer day, and all of it together creates the temporal fabric of existence in this solar system. Let that fabric cradle you now. Let the cycles hold you. Let the rhythms of worlds become the rhythm of your breath, slowing, deepening, carrying you down into the restful depths where no thoughts disturb, where existence continues but awareness pauses, where the cycles continue but you need not witness them. The worlds turn, the sleeper rests, and in that rest all cycles find their purpose, the opportunity to pause, to restore, to prepare for the continuation that follows every ending, the new beginning that follows every rest. Sleep now in the cycles. Sleep in the rhythms. Sleep in the eternal return of days and nights, of seasons and ages, of worlds that live and die and perhaps live again in different forms. The story continues, but you can rest. The cycles continue, but you can pause. The journey continues, but you can stop moving and simply float, held by forces larger than choice, sustained by patterns older than consciousness. Rest. Cycle through your sleep stages. Let the worlds turn without you. Dawn will come when it comes, and until then, only darkness, only rest, only the deep peace of surrender to the rhythms that govern all existence. Sleep and let the cycles carry you. Now we enter the great emptiness, the vast silence of the Martian surface stretching in all directions beneath a pink sky. In this hour of deepest night on Earth, we contemplate the desert that Mars has become, not with sadness, but with the peaceful acceptance of one who watches the stars and knows that all things change. The desert is patient. It requires nothing. It simply exists, red and rust and infinite variations of iron oxide dust, shaped by wind into dunes and swept clean into plains, stretching across continents without cities, oceans of sand without water. Let yourself become the desert for a moment, vast and still, empty of urgency. Not the dramatic desert of Earth's Sahara or Gobi, where heat shimmers and life hides from the sun only to emerge at dusk. Mars's desert is different, colder, more thorough in its emptiness, more complete in its desolation. The temperature at the Martian equator at noon might reach a pleasant 20 degrees Celsius, warm enough for a human to stand comfortably in sunlight. But at night, that same location plunges to minus 73 degrees Celsius, cold enough to freeze carbon dioxide from the atmosphere into frost. This is a desert not of heat, but of extremes, of temperature swings that would destroy most Earth life, of atmospheric pressure so low that liquid water cannot exist on the surface, evaporating or freezing instantly when exposed. And yet, in this extreme environment, a stark beauty emerges. The rovers have sent back images of landscapes that could inspire contemplation for hours. Wind-carved ridges, each layer a different shade of rust and ochre and umber. Fields of dark sand dunes, their faces steep and smooth, marching across crater floors. Rocky plains strewn with boulders, each casting its precise shadow in the thin, clear air. Picture yourself standing on one of these plains now, though you know no human has ever stood on Mars. The sky above you glows salmon pink from suspended dust. The sun appears about 2/3 the size it appears from Earth, still bright, but subtly smaller, subtly more distant. The light has a quality you've never experienced, thin and clear, and somehow intimate despite the desolation. No sound but the wind, and the wind makes little sound in air so thin. Perhaps a gentle whisper as it moves past your spacesuit. The distant hiss of sand grains saltating across rock. Otherwise, silence more complete than any you've experienced on Earth, where even in the quietest places birds call and insects hum, and the air itself seems to vibrate with life. On Mars, true silence. The silence of a world without biology, without the constant acoustic presence of life going about its business, just wind and rock and the slow settling of dust, the patient processes of geology continuing in the absence of anything living to witness them. Let that silence fill you now. Let it become restful rather than oppressive, a gift of emptiness rather than a burden of absence. In the desert, silence is not lack, but presence, the opportunity to hear subtle things usually drowned out by noise. Your breath, if you were actually standing on Mars in a spacesuit, cycling in and out through your life support systems, your heartbeat, amplified in your ears by conduction through your body. These would be the only biological sounds on the entire planet, a tiny island of life in an ocean of geology. But you're not actually there. You're here, safe in your bed on Earth, drifting through this story in the hours before dawn. And the silence around you is gentler, warmer, full of the subtle sounds of a living world even at night. Distant traffic perhaps, the settling of your dwelling, the soft ambience that marks this planet as thoroughly colonized by life. Mars had that once, perhaps. If the theories we've explored hold any truth, Mars once knew the sounds of weather more complex than wind, of water moving in rivers and lapping against shores, possibly of life itself, whatever sounds Martian organisms might have made. Now those sounds are gone, replaced by the infinite silence of the desert, broken only occasionally by the crack of rocks expanding in daytime warmth and contracting in nighttime cold, by the distant rumble of a landslide in some crater wall, by the whisper of dust devils dancing across the plains. The desert teaches acceptance of impermanence. What once lived is gone. What once flowed is frozen or evaporated. What once thrived is extinct. And yet the world continues, beautiful in its barrenness, meaningful in its meaninglessness. There's something deeply soothing about the desert's indifference, its refusal to care whether we find it hospitable or hostile, whether we discover evidence of past life or confirm eternal sterility. Mars simply is, and that isness requires nothing from us beyond whatever meaning we choose to assign it. Let your mind stretch now across the vast emptiness of Valles Marineris, the great canyon system that dwarfs Earth's Grand Canyon. Over 4,000 kilometers long, up to 7 kilometers deep, this scar across Mars's face formed billions of years ago when the planet's crust cracked during the formation of the nearby Tharsis volcanic region. Stand at its rim in your imagination, looking down into depths that could swallow mountain ranges. The far side is so distant, it disappears over the horizon. The floor is wrinkled with landslides and layered with sediments. Some scientists believe this canyon system once held water, perhaps channels flowing into a vast lake. But now it's dry, carved by forces long since ceased, waiting in geological patience for whatever might come next. Eons from now, this canyon will slowly fill with wind-blown dust and sediment, will erode and soften, will perhaps disappear entirely as Mars's geology continues its slow work of reshaping the surface. Or perhaps new tectonic activity will deepen it further, split it wider, create new landscapes we can't predict. The desert is not static, only slow, changing on timescales that make human history invisible. Across the canyon, across the endless plains, across the volcanic slopes and ancient highlands, the desert extends in variation and sameness, each location unique in its details, but all sharing the essential character of abandonment, of processes interrupted, of a world that tried for habitability and fell short. Or perhaps not fell short. Perhaps Mars was habitable for exactly as long as it was meant to be, its wet period a successful experiment that ran its course before conditions changed. Perhaps the desert is not failure but transition, the next chapter in a story that hasn't ended, only transformed. Even now Mars changes. The polar ice caps grow and shrink with seasons, layering new ice in winter, sublimating in summer. Dust storms rearrange the surface features, erasing some patterns and creating new ones. Impact craters continue to form as asteroids and meteorites strike the surface, the most recent creating fresh scars visible from orbit. The desert is alive in its way, not with biology, but with process, with the ongoing activity of a dynamic world. It's quieter than Earth, slower, but not dead in any absolute sense. It's transforming, evolving, becoming whatever it will be next, across time frames we can barely comprehend. Let your breathing match the patient pace of these changes now. Slow, measured, requiring nothing, simply continuing, because continuation is what systems do until they don't. In and out, like the slow sublimation and deposition of water at the Martian poles, like the gradual redistribution of dust by seasonal winds. The desert holds memory in its layers, in its stratigraphy, in the rocks that formed under ancient water and now sit exposed to vacuum and cold. These memories are physical, chemical, readable by those who know the language of geology. They don't require consciousness to persist, don't need anyone to remember them for them to exist as information encoded in matter. If Martian civilization existed, the desert has absorbed it, covered it, weathered it, reduced it to constituent atoms perhaps, or buried it beneath layers of later deposition. The desert is patient and thorough in its reclamation, accepting everything back into itself, distinguishing not between natural and artificial, only between exposed and buried, between solid and eroded. Imagine the last Martian, if such a being existed, watching the final sunset of their civilization, knowing the world was changing beyond their ability to survive on the surface, preparing to retreat underground, or simply accepting extinction with whatever grace or despair their psychology allowed. They would see the same desert, perhaps less extensive then, with water still flowing in some protected valleys, with ice still sublimating and reforming in seasonal cycles. But they would know the trajectory, understand that the habitable window was closing, that Mars was becoming the desert world we now observe. Did they leave messages for whoever might come after? Did they encode their history in some format, hoping future explorers would find and interpret? Or did they simply end, leaving no deliberate trace, only the ambient evidence of their existence scattered randomly across a landscape that would weather it away over billions of years? The desert knows but doesn't tell. It keeps whatever secrets the dust has buried, reveals only what erosion happens to expose, operates according to physical laws that have no category for intentionality, meaning, or story. And perhaps that's as it should be. Perhaps the universe doesn't owe us narratives with clear beginnings, middles, and ends. Perhaps the desert's refusal to provide easy answers is itself a teaching, a reminder that not everything resolves into story, that some things simply are and then aren't, without explanation or purpose beyond the physical necessity of their occurrence. Let that teaching settle over you like dust, soft and comprehensive, covering the need to know with the peace of accepting uncertainty. The infinite desert extends in all directions, both on Mars and in the space of not knowing, and both are navigable, both survivable, both even beautiful in their way. Your own mind, drifting now toward or through sleep, becomes desert-like in its emptiness, thoughts less frequent, awareness more diffuse, the busy commerce of waking consciousness giving way to the spacious silence of deep rest. This is healthy, necessary, the daily journey into interior deserts where the self temporarily dissolves, where the constant narrative of identity pauses, where you exist without the burden of being anyone in particular, just consciousness resting in awareness of nothing specific. The Martian desert and the desert of deep sleep share this quality of emptiness, of space without content, of existence without the clutter of meaning and interpretation. They're not the same, but they rhyme, they resonate, they offer similar gifts of simplicity and peace. Picture the Martian desert at night now, temperature plummeting, carbon dioxide frost forming on every surface, stars emerging with a clarity impossible in Earth's denser atmosphere. The Milky Way blazes overhead, its spiral arms visible as rivers of light. Earth appears as a bright blue star, morning and evening star, to any hypothetical Martian observer, beautiful and unreachable. Under this sky, the desert sleeps, if such a word applies to geology. Activity slows in the cold, wind dies down, though it never stops entirely. Rocks contract with audible cracks, ice crystals form. The surface settles into the deepest quiet of the Martian night. And you settle too into your own deep quiet, into the personal desert of unconsciousness, where no thoughts bloom, where awareness, if it persists at all, exists without object, pure presence without content. The rover Curiosity has photographed the Earth from Mars's surface, capturing our home world as a small, bright dot with the moon visible beside it. Looking at that image, we see ourselves from the outside, see how we appear from the infinite desert, tiny, fragile, precious, impossibly alive in the vast deadness of space. Mars reminds us of our fortune, our luck, to live on a world that remains habitable, that hasn't yet become desert, that still knows water and weather and the constant presence of life. We're the lucky ones, at least for now, living in Earth's long summer before the distant autumn billions of years away. But Mars also reminds us that worlds change, that habitability is temporary, that nothing in the cosmos promises permanence. The desert we see on Mars is Earth's possible future, and perhaps other worlds' actual past. The cycle continues: birth, flourishing, desiccation, waiting, perhaps rebirth in some new form. Let these vast perspectives wash through you without creating existential anxiety, without demanding that you solve cosmic problems. They're too large for individual action, these planetary timescales. They simply are contexts within which your life briefly unfolds, backdrops against which the small joys and sorrows of human existence play out. Your life matters within its own scale, even if it's invisible on the geological timeline, even if your species will likely be gone long before Earth faces its desert transformation. The fact of temporary existence doesn't negate the experience of living, perhaps makes it more precious for its brevity. The desert teaches this too, that emptiness and fullness, presence and absence, life and lifelessness are all part of the larger pattern, all necessary phases in the cosmic cycle. Nothing is permanent, but nothing is ultimately lost either. Matter persists, energy continues, patterns form and dissolve and reform endlessly. Mars will change again. In some distant future, perhaps human technology or some other intervention will restore its atmosphere, reboot its magnetic field, return water to its surface. The desert could bloom again, though what blooms might be so artificial, so engineered, that calling it life seems strange. Or perhaps Mars will be left as it is, a preserve of natural processes, a desert allowed to remain desert, beautiful in its barrenness, meaningful in its memorial to what once was. These futures remain unwritten, possibilities hovering in the desert air like heat shimmer, visible but intangible, real but not yet actualized. The desert waits, patient as stone, indifferent to what comes next, simply persisting in its current state until something changes it or it changes itself through the slow working of geological time. And you wait too, in a sense, floating in this space between waking and sleep, neither fully conscious nor fully unconscious, hovering in the liminal desert where the self becomes less solid, more permeable, more willing to dissolve into the larger emptiness. This is the gift of the infinite desert: permission to be empty, to rest in absence, to exist without the constant work of maintaining identity and intention. Here, in the deep night, on the edge of sleep, you can release all that and simply be, like the Martian desert simply is, without purpose or plan, without past or future, only the eternal present of existence continuing because it hasn't yet stopped. The sand dunes of Mars shift grain by grain, imperceptibly slow but relentlessly moving, following wind patterns established by the planet's rotation and solar heating. Over centuries, a dune might migrate hundreds of meters. Over millions of years, entire dune fields could cross continents, bury and reveal landscapes, write and erase the surface features of the planet. You too are shifting, grain by grain of consciousness, migrating from awareness toward unconsciousness, following patterns established by your biology, by circadian rhythms and sleep pressure, by the simple need for rest that all conscious beings share. Let yourself migrate without resistance. Let the dunes of awareness shift and settle. Let the infinite desert of sleep extend its welcome, offering the rest that comes only from complete surrender, from releasing the need to be awake, aware, in control. The desert forgives everything, accepts everything, covers everything equally with dust. There's no judgment in its emptiness, no preference for one state over another. It simply receives what comes and incorporates it into itself, neutral and comprehensive in its embrace. Sleep is like this, accepting whatever consciousness brings to it. Worries, joys, questions, peace, all dissolved in the deeper process of rest, all incorporated and processed and released, leaving you renewed when awareness returns. But renewal is still hours away. For now, only the desert, only the emptiness, only the vast silence broken by nothing but the whisper of your breath and the slow settling of consciousness into its nightly rest. Mars turns beneath its pink sky, the desert extending in all directions, empty and full simultaneously, barren and beautiful, dead and somehow still vital in its persistent existence. And you turn too, through your sleep cycle, through the night, through the eternal rotation of consciousness and unconsciousness that structures every life, every day, every being that evolved the trick of awareness and the wisdom to periodically release it. Rest in the infinite desert, rest in the emptiness, rest in the peace that requires nothing because there's nothing left to require. The dunes shift, the dust settles, the desert breathes its slow breath, and you breathe yours, slower still, descending into depths where the desert becomes everything and nothing, where Mars and Earth and sleep and waking all dissolve into the simple fact of existence, pausing to rest before continuing. Sleep now. The desert will still be there tomorrow. The mysteries will wait. The questions can rest. Only sleep now. Only the infinite desert of unconsciousness, welcoming and complete. Only rest. In these hours when night has stretched beyond counting, when even the story of Mars begins to fade like stars at approaching dawn, we come to a gentle releasing, a soft goodbye to the red planet and its mysteries, allowing them to drift back into the cosmic distance while we float in the peaceful space of not needing to know You don't need Mars anymore tonight. You don't need its secrets or its possibilities, its ancient oceans or its present deserts. You don't need to solve the mystery of whether civilization once looked up from its surface at Earth, wondering as we wonder at them. Let Mars recede now, growing smaller in your inner vision, the red dot in the sky returning to being just a red dot, beautiful but distant, mysterious but not demanding, present in the cosmos but not requiring your attention. There's a peace in releasing questions, in admitting that some things may never be known, that the universe is under no obligation to satisfy human curiosity, that mysteries can remain mysteries without diminishing the value of having contemplated them. If Martian civilization existed, it's gone now, absorbed back into the planet that birthed it, leaving traces so subtle we may never recognize them, or so eroded that nothing recognizable remains. And that's acceptable. Not every story has an ending we can read. Not every question has an answer we can find. The search continues, missions launched and planned, rovers exploring, and future astronauts someday walking the rust-red soil. Perhaps they'll find definitive evidence. Perhaps they'll confirm Mars was always lifeless, always just geology without biology. Either answer serves science, adds to knowledge, helps us understand our place in the universe. But tonight, you don't need to wait for those answers. Tonight, you can release your grip on the question, let it float away like a balloon released to the sky, rising and shrinking and eventually becoming invisible, gone but not lost, existing somewhere in the realm of questions asked but not yet answered. Feel your hands unclenching, whether physical hands holding tension in sleep or metaphorical hands gripping thoughts. Let them open, releasing whatever they held, allowing emptiness to replace grasping, allowing peace to replace the need to know. Mars taught us something by being unknown, that we can contemplate mysteries without solving them, that wonder doesn't require resolution, that the journey of asking questions has value independent of the answers we find. We looked at Mars and saw both what's there and what we hoped might be there, both the reality of a cold desert world and the possibility of ancient oceans, both the sterile present and the potentially fertile past. Both visions taught us something, the reality about planetary science, the possibility about our own yearning for companionship in the cosmos. We're meaning-making creatures, pattern-seeking minds that can't help but look for signs of other minds, can't help but hope we're not alone, can't help but interpret ambiguous evidence as maybe, possibly, perhaps suggesting intelligence arose somewhere else, sometime before or after us. This tendency isn't weakness or foolishness. It's fundamental to how consciousness relates to cosmos, how awareness reaches out seeking other awareness, how minds hope for minds. Even if every anomaly on Mars has natural explanation, even if no civilization ever existed there, our looking reveals something true and important about who we are. Let that insight settle gently, that the search itself matters, that the wondering itself has value, that asking what if opens doors in consciousness, regardless of what physical evidence eventually shows. You can stop searching now, at least for tonight. You can stop wondering about structures and faces, about ancient oceans and vanished rivers. You can let Mars be Mars, a planet in our solar system, important for scientific study but not required to fulfill our hopes for finding cosmic companionship. The need for that companionship is real and deep, but it doesn't require Mars to have hosted civilization. Perhaps life will be found elsewhere, on moons of Jupiter or Saturn where underground oceans might harbor simple organisms, or in the atmospheres of Venus or the geysers of Enceladus, or in the lakes of Titan where methane replaces water but chemistry still creates complexity. Or perhaps life is common but intelligence rare, and Earth's particular flowering of consciousness is unusual without being unique, one of countless experiments scattered across galaxies and eons, most never becoming aware of the others, existing in isolation, not from cosmic loneliness, but from simple statistical distribution across space and time. These questions are too large for the hour, too expansive for minds needing rest. Let them drift away with Mars, carried on the same gentle current that returns you to the simplicity of breathing, of existing without questions, of being without the burden of wondering. Your breath continues its rhythm, requiring nothing from you, following patterns established by billions of years of evolutionary refinement. You're built to breathe, to sleep, to rest and restore. These processes don't need your conscious participation. They work better, in fact, when you stop trying to help and simply surrender to their autonomy. Surrender to them now. Surrender to the breath that breathes itself, to the heart that beats itself, to the body that knows how to sleep without instruction from the conscious mind. Trust the ancient wisdom built into your cells, into your nervous system, into the regulatory mechanisms that have kept life alive through countless generations. Mars doesn't need your attention to keep existing. The rovers exploring its surface operate on pre-programmed schedules, taking measurements whether anyone on Earth is awake to monitor them. The planet rotates on its axis, orbits the Sun, follows gravitational laws without requiring conscious observation. It's fine without you. And you're fine without it, at least for now, at least for these remaining hours of night before dawn brings back the day-lit world with its demands and details. For now, you can release Mars, release all questions about ancient civilizations, release the mysteries, and let them rest in their own uncertainty. There's something deeply restful about uncertainty accepted, about not knowing embraced rather than resisted. The mind spends so much energy trying to resolve ambiguities, to force questions toward answers, to create certainty where none exists. What peace comes from releasing that effort, from allowing mystery to be mysterious, from accepting that some things remain unknown. Mars, whether it ever hosted civilization or not, has taught us this, that we can look at evidence and remain uncertain, that we can contemplate possibilities without needing to choose definitively among them, that we can hold multiple potential truths simultaneously without discomfort. This is the wisdom of twilight thinking, of the liminal states between waking and sleep, where boundaries soften and categories blur. In full daylight consciousness, we might feel pressure to decide, to commit to one interpretation or another. But here, in the deep night, we can float among possibilities without grasping any of them. Let yourself float now, not just among possibilities about Mars, but among all the thoughts and concerns and questions that populate your mind. Don't grasp any of them. Don't push any of them away. Simply float, allowing them to drift past like clouds, present but not solid, visible but not substantial. The red planet drifts past too, one cloud among many, beautiful in the pattern of its dust storms, intriguing in the mystery of its past, but just one object of contemplation among countless others, not special except in the significance we choose to assign it. And even that significance can be released, let go, allowed to dissolve into the general significance of the cosmos itself, where everything matters because it exists, but nothing requires our specific attention to continue mattering in its own way. Mars will be Mars. You will be you. The space between you contains both vast distance and intimate connection, the same atoms, the same physical laws, the same universe creating both world and witness. But the connection doesn't require constant attention. It persists whether acknowledged or not. So acknowledge it one last time, gently. You and Mars are both children of this solar system, both formed from the same cloud of dust and gas that collapsed into sun and planets 4.5 billion years ago. You're related in that sense, family members in the planetary system, sharing origins, if not current conditions. And now, having acknowledged the kinship, you can release even that, can let Mars return to being another world among worlds, important to planetary science but not required to be important to your immediate awareness, especially Not in this hour when awareness itself seeks to dissolve into the peace of unconscious rest. Let Mars go. Let the civilization that might have been go. Let the questions go. Let even the beauty of contemplating mysteries go, releasing all of it into the care of the universe itself, which will keep everything safely without your attention, which has been managing planets and possibilities for billions of years without needing your help. You've done your part by wondering, by imagining, by allowing the story to carry you through these hours. That's enough. That's complete. Nothing more is required. Now only sleep is required, only rest, only the surrender to unconsciousness that comes not from effort, but from releasing all effort, from letting go so completely that even the letting go can be let go of. Mars fades to darkness, the red light dims, the planet becomes just one more star in the night sky of inner space, distant and beautiful and no longer demanding notice. And in that darkness, that distance, that blessed release of attention, there's only the peace of having wondered without needing answers, of having questioned without requiring solutions, of having contemplated mysteries while remaining comfortable with mystery. Sleep comes from this comfort, this peace with not knowing. Sleep comes when we stop grasping. Sleep comes when Mars can be Mars and we can be ourselves, and neither requires anything from the other. Let go now, finally and completely. Let go of Mars, of mysteries, of questions, of wonder itself. Let go, and in the letting go, find rest. Perfect, complete, blessed rest. In the quietest part of night, when even the story has grown soft and whisper thin, we touch lightly on a final contemplation. The hidden threads that connect all things, the subtle relationships between worlds and minds, between past and future, between what was and what might yet be. These connections don't require understanding, only gentle acknowledgement as you drift through this last chapter before true silence falls. Mars and Earth, separated by millions of kilometers, remain connected by gravity's invisible threads, by the meteorites that travel between them, by the shared history of formation from the same primordial dust cloud. What happens to one world echoes subtly in the other. When Mars lost its magnetic field, it became vulnerable to solar wind. When Earth developed its large moon through a giant impact, it gained rotational stability. These separate histories intertwine through gravitational effects, through the occasional exchange of material, through the way each planet's fate influences what's possible for life in the solar system. If Mars once had life, and if that life seeded Earth, then every living thing on our planet carries Martian heritage, ancient connection to a world now dead, genetic memory of a different beginning on a different world. We would be Martians in that case, refugees from a dying planet who found new home on a neighboring world not yet ready for indigenous life. The connection would be written in our DNA, in the basic machinery of cells, in the chemistry that all Earth life shares. We'd be unable to recognize it without finding Martian life to compare, but it would be there, a hidden signature of interplanetary origin. Or perhaps Earth's life arose independently and the connection between worlds is only physical and gravitational, not biological. But even then, the simple fact of sharing a solar system creates relationship, creates contexts within which each planet's story affects the others. These hidden connections extend beyond physical worlds to include consciousness itself, the strange emergence of awareness from matter, the mysterious process by which atoms organized into molecules, organized into cells, organized into nervous systems, capable of wondering about their own existence. Consciousness on Earth arose once as far as we know, though it has elaborated into countless forms: human intelligence, dolphin awareness, octopus cognition, crow cleverness, each a different solution to the problem of navigating environment through internal modeling and prediction. If consciousness arose on Mars, it would have been another solution, perhaps similar in basic principles, but different in expression, shaped by Martian conditions, by different gravity and atmospheric pressure, by the particular challenges and opportunities of that world. And though separated by billions of years and millions of kilometers, the two emergences would be connected by the fact of both being consciousness, both being matter, becoming aware of itself, both participating in what might be a universal tendency for complexity to develop awareness given sufficient time and favorable conditions. This is the deepest hidden connection, not between specific worlds or civilizations, but between all instances of consciousness wherever and whenever they arise, all participating in the universe's apparent drive toward self-awareness, toward complexity that can contemplate complexity. You are one instance of this process: consciousness localized in your particular nervous system, awareness experiencing itself through your unique perspective. Somewhere in the cosmos, perhaps, other instances exist or have existed or will exist, all separate yet all connected by the simple fact of being aware, of being the universe looking at itself through temporary openings in the fabric of matter. Let this connection comfort rather than overwhelm you. You're not alone in the deepest sense, even if no other civilization exists in this cosmic era, in this galaxy. You're part of a larger pattern, a tendency toward awareness that has expressed before and will express again, that might be expressing right now in countless locations we'll never discover. The hidden connections include time as well as space, linking past to future through the persistence of matter and energy. The atoms in your body were forged in ancient stars, scattered by supernovae, incorporated into the dust cloud that became our solar system, eventually finding their way into Earth and into you. Some of those atoms might have once been part of Mars, ejected by asteroid impacts, traveling through space, landing on Earth, eventually becoming part of living organisms, eventually becoming part of you. You might be partly Martian in the most literal sense, built from matter that once belonged to the red planet, and those same atoms will continue after you, returning to Earth, perhaps eventually being ejected into space by some future impact, traveling to other worlds, participating in other stories, other structures, other possibilities we can't imagine. Matter is immortal in this sense, continuously recycled, never created or destroyed, but only transformed, connecting all times and places through its persistence and circulation. You're made of stardust, as the poets and scientists both affirm, and so was Mars, and so is everything. All of us built from the same recycled materials, all connected through shared substance, even when separated by space and time. These hidden connections form a web more intricate than any mind can fully trace, links between everything and everything else, causes and effects rippling across light years and eons, creating a cosmos that's fundamentally unified despite appearing fragmented into separate objects and events. You don't need to understand this web, only sense it vaguely as you drift in this quiet hour, feeling perhaps some subtle reassurance that isolation is illusion, that separation is superficial, that at the deepest levels everything connects to everything else through the simple fact of existing in the same universe, following the same physical laws made from the same fundamental particles. Mars connects to you, you connect to Mars. Not in any mystical sense requiring belief, but in the simple physical sense of sharing origins, sharing atoms, sharing a solar system, sharing the strange fact of being complex structures, temporarily maintaining order against entropy's patient pull toward dissolution. The connections persist whether acknowledged or not, whether understood or not. They simply are, like so much else in the cosmos, indifferent to observation, but somehow more beautiful for that indifference, more profound for not requiring recognition to be real. Let these thoughts drift now, becoming less distinct, less verbal, more felt than thought, more sensation than concept. The connections continue below the level of words, in the silent substrate where everything touches everything else, where boundaries between self and world, between consciousness and cosmos, soften and blur and perhaps disappear entirely. In deepest sleep, if you're not already there, even these subtle connections release, and there's only undifferentiated existence, awareness without object, presence without separation, the universe experiencing itself without division into observer and observed. This is the hidden connection that underlies all others, the fundamental unity of existence, the simple fact that there is something rather than nothing, being rather than non-being, and that all specific instances of being participate in this larger being, this cosmic isness that includes everything. Mars participates. You participate. The ancient civilization that might have been participates still, even in absence, even as possibility, rather than confirmed reality. Everything that exists and everything that might exist, all connected through the simple fact of being conceivable, of being possible within the laws of physics, of being part of the space of potential that the universe explores through its evolution. Rest in that connection now, that deepest web that holds everything, that requires nothing from you, but allows you to rest in the knowledge that you're held, you're connected, you're part of something larger that continues whether you're conscious of it or not. The hidden connections work in darkness, in silence, beneath awareness, connecting while you sleep, maintaining the web while you rest. Let them do their work. Let the connections hold without your attention. Let everything relate to everything else while you sink below the level where relationships matter, where connections require acknowledgement, where hidden threads need to be perceived to function. Sleep now in the web, sleep in the connections, sleep in the hidden substrate where Mars and Earth and you and all things touch each other through the simple fact of coexisting in this impossible, beautiful, mysterious cosmos. The threads hold, the web persists, the connections continue, and you rest deeply and completely held by everything, connected to everything, part of everything, even in the absolute darkness of unconscious sleep. Rest now. The connections will remain. Everything is held. Everything is connected. Everything, including you, is safe in the web. Sleep. As the longest night approaches its final hours, before even the gentlest dawn begins its distant approach, we rest in one last contemplation. The gift that Mars has given us simply by being mysterious, by inviting questions, by allowing us to wonder. Wonder itself is the gift, not the answers. The experience of looking at another world and asking, what if? The permission to imagine, to speculate, to dream of possibilities that evidence neither confirms nor denies. This is what Mars offers. The opportunity to wonder. Children wonder naturally, effortlessly, without needing permission or justification. They look at the world with fresh eyes, asking endless questions, imagining possibilities adults have learned to dismiss. Wonder is our birthright, our natural relationship with a cosmos that contains more mystery than certainty, more questions than answers. But we often lose this gift as we age, trading wonder for knowledge, imagination for facts, openness for certainty. We learn what's real and what's fantasy, and we stop allowing ourselves to dwell in the spaces between, the maybe places where wonder lives. Mars invites us back to those spaces. Look at this world, it says. Here's evidence of ancient water, but the rest is uncertain. Here's geology that might be only geology, or might be more. Here's a mystery without easy resolution. Here's permission to wonder again. To wonder, and in accepting that invitation, in allowing ourselves to wonder about ancient Martian civilization, we exercise capacities that make us distinctly human. Imagination, speculation, the ability to contemplate possibilities beyond our direct experience. Even if every speculation proves wrong, the wondering itself has value. It keeps consciousness flexible, keeps imagination alive, prevents the premature closure of assuming we know everything worth knowing. Wonder is how we stay open to surprise, how we remain ready for discoveries that challenge our assumptions. Science itself begins in wonder. Every great discovery starts with someone asking, "What if?" Or "Why?" Or "Could it be?" The careful methodology, the rigorous testing, the demand for evidence, all come later. First comes the wonder, the curiosity, the willingness to question what seems certain and imagine what seems impossible. Mars, by remaining mysterious, by offering just enough evidence to invite speculation while withholding enough to prevent certainty, serves as a teacher of wonder. It shows us how to hold questions lightly, how to contemplate without grasping, how to imagine without insisting that imagination become reality. This is sophisticated awareness, to wonder while knowing you're wondering, to imagine while recognizing imagination as imagination, to speculate while remaining uncommitted to speculation as fact. It's the middle way between naive belief and cynical dismissal, between gullibility and closed-mindedness. Children haven't learned this sophistication yet. They believe their imaginings directly, experience fantasy as real. Adults often overcorrect, dismissing all imagination as childish, all wonder as naive. But mature wonder transcends both extremes, holding imagination and reality in dynamic balance, allowing speculation while maintaining grounding. This is the gift Mars gives those who receive it consciously. Practice in mature wondering, exercise in holding multiple possibilities simultaneously, training in staying open while remaining rational. And beyond its training value, wonder simply feels good. It's pleasurable to imagine, to speculate, to let your mind play with possibilities. The tingle of what if, the slight excitement of contemplating mystery, the satisfaction of framing questions even without answering them. These feelings are valuable in themselves, independent of whether the wondering leads to knowledge. They enrich consciousness, add texture to experience, make life more interesting than it would be with only certainty and fact. Mars has given you some of this tonight, if you've been aware enough to receive it. Hours of wondering about ancient civilization, about faces and structures, about water and dust and cycles and deserts. Hours of imaginative exploration of a world you'll likely never visit physically but can visit in imagination whenever you choose. This is the gift, those hours, that wondering, that exercise of imagination and contemplation, not answers, not certainty, not even strong probability of one interpretation over another. Just the experience of wondering itself, the journey through questions, the pleasure of contemplating mystery. And you can return to this gift whenever you want. Mars remains mysterious, the questions persist, the invitation to wonder stays open. Any clear night, you can look up, find that red point of light, and ask, what if? The wondering costs nothing and gives freely. Let yourself feel gratitude for this gift, if gratitude comes naturally. Gratitude not to Mars itself, which is unconscious rock and dust, but to the universe for arranging itself in ways that invite wonder, for creating mysteries at every scale, for making itself endlessly interesting to beings capable of consciousness. Or, if gratitude doesn't arise naturally, simply acknowledge the gift, that wonder exists, that mystery exists, that you're capable of both, that consciousness includes this capacity to speculate and imagine and ask questions that might never be answered. The gift doesn't require anything from you in return. You don't need to solve the mysteries or prove the speculations. You don't need to defend your wondering or justify your imagination. The gift is free, no strings attached, simply there for the taking whenever you choose to receive it. Children know this instinctively. They wonder without self-consciousness, without worrying whether their wondering is justified or their imagination accurate. They simply wonder because wondering is delightful, imagination is pleasurable, and consciousness enjoys contemplating possibilities. In this deep hour, you can remember that childlike simplicity while maintaining adult sophistication. You can wonder about Mars with full awareness that you're wondering, full recognition that imagination isn't reality, full acceptance that the mysteries might never be solved. This is mature wonder, and it's perhaps more valuable than childlike wonder because it's chosen, maintained, despite knowledge that could suppress it, kept alive through conscious decision rather than innocent default. Mars has helped you practice this tonight, if you've engaged with the journey. The story has wandered through speculation and science, imagination and evidence, possibility and probability, always maintaining some space for wonder without collapsing into either naive belief or cynical dismissal. This balance is worth practicing because life constantly challenges it. The world pushes us toward certainty, toward choosing sides, toward defending positions. But wonder lives in the space between positions, in the openness to multiple possibilities, in the willingness to not know while remaining engaged with questions. The gift of wonder is ultimately the gift of remaining alive to possibility, of keeping consciousness flexible and open, of refusing the comfortable closure of certainty in favor of the ongoing adventure of questioning. Mars offers this gift freely. The cosmos offers it constantly. Every mystery, every unanswered question, every ambiguous piece of evidence is an invitation to wonder, to imagine, to contemplate possibilities. And accepting these invitations, practicing this wondering, makes consciousness richer, makes life more textured, makes existence more interesting than it would be with only the known and the certain. So receive the gift if you haven't already. Let yourself appreciate the hours of wondering, the journey through Martian possibilities, the experience of imagination, engaging with evidence, creating stories that might or might not be true, but are worth telling regardless. And carry this gift forward beyond tonight, beyond Mars, into whatever mysteries you encounter in the daylight world. Everything invites wonder if you're willing to receive the invitation. Everything can be questioned, contemplated, imagined differently than you currently imagine it. This is freedom, not knowing everything, not having all answers, remaining open to surprise and possibility. This is richness, consciousness, engaging playfully with reality, wondering about what is and what might be, staying curious and open and alive to mystery. Mars has given you this reminder tonight. The red planet, distant and mysterious, has served as teacher and invitation, showing you that wonder is always available, always valuable, always worth practicing. Let that lesson settle gently as these final chapters fade into silence. Let the gift of wonder be the thing you carry from this journey, more valuable than any answer about whether Martian civilization existed, more lasting than any specific fact or theory. Wonder is renewable. You can return to it endlessly without depleting it. Each time you look at Mars, each time you contemplate any mystery, the gift is there again, fresh and available, ready to enrich your consciousness if you're willing to receive it. And in the deep stillness of this hour, wonder itself becomes restful rather than energizing. It's not the urgent wondering of daylight, demanding resolution and answers. It's the peaceful wondering of night, content to contemplate without concluding, to imagine without insisting, to hold questions softly without grasping for solutions. This nighttime wondering is its own form of meditation, its own path to peace. Instead of emptying the mind of all content, it fills the mind with gentle possibilities, with soft maybes, with questions that don't press for answers, but simply float like stars in inner space. Let your wondering about Mars become this kind of meditation now. Questions without urgency, possibilities without attachment, mysteries that comfort rather than disturb. Let the wondering itself become a kind of rest, a soft focus for consciousness that's more restful than the hard focus of problem solving, more peaceful than the scattered attention of distraction. Wonder, in its gentlest form, is almost indistinguishable from dreaming. Both involve consciousness engaging playfully with possibilities, creating scenarios and images, following associations without strict logic, allowing imagination its freedom while maintaining some thread of continuity. As you drift deeper into sleep, if you haven't already arrived there fully, your wondering about Mars might transform into dreams about red landscapes, about ancient oceans, about civilizations that never were or might have been. And those dreams, like the wondering that preceded them, have value independent of their relationship to external reality. They're experiences of consciousness, adventures of imagination, journeys through inner space that mirror the outer journey to Mars. They enrich your inner life, add dimensions to your experience, remind you that consciousness can create worlds even while observing them. The gift of wonder extends even into sleep, where imagination becomes fully untethered from reality, where anything becomes possible, where Martian civilizations can rise and fall, where you can walk on red sands under pink skies, where mysteries can resolve into whatever your dreaming mind creates. And when you wake, the gift continues. You'll return to a world that contains Mars, still mysterious, still inviting wonder, still offering the gift of questions without demanding that you answer them. This is perhaps the deepest teaching, that the universe is generous with mystery, that it provides endless opportunities to wonder, that it never demands you solve everything or understand everything or know everything. You're permitted to wonder, you're invited to imagine. You're encouraged to ask questions that might never be answered. This permission, this invitation, this encouragement, these are gifts from a cosmos that apparently delights in consciousness, contemplating itself, in awareness engaging with mystery, in minds reaching out toward the unknown. Mars is one vehicle for this gift, but the gift itself is universal. Every cloud that crosses the sky can invite wonder about weather and chaos theory. Every flower can inspire questions about evolution and beauty. Every stranger on the street carries mysteries of their inner life that you'll never fully know. Every moment of existence is saturated with mystery if you're willing to see it. The gift of wonder is ultimately the gift of staying awake to this saturation, of noticing the mystery that permeates everything, of maintaining the capacity to be surprised and curious and engaged with the endless questions that reality presents. And paradoxically, this wakefulness to mystery supports the deep sleep of rest. When you wonder softly, without urgency, without demanding answers, the mind settles into a peaceful state, similar to meditation, similar to the borderlands of sleep. The gentle engagement with questions relaxes rather than stimulates, soothes rather than excites. So let the gift of wonder become your lullaby now. Let the questions about Mars, about ancient civilizations, about mysteries written in dust and rock, become the soft voice that accompanies you into sleep. Let wondering itself be the last conscious activity before unconsciousness claims you entirely. And know that whether you remember any of this when you wake, whether you dream of Mars or of something else entirely, the gift has been given and received. You've spent hours in wonder, in contemplation, in gentle questioning. That experience has enriched your consciousness, whether or not you recall specific details, whether or not you reached any conclusions. The wondering itself was the point. The journey through questions was the destination. The gift was given in every moment you engaged with possibility, every moment you held your mind open to mystery, every moment you allowed yourself to imagine what might have been on a distant, red world. Receive that gift now in fullness, with gratitude or simple acknowledgement, with joy or peaceful acceptance. The gift is complete. The wondering has been experienced. The journey is essentially finished, though a few more soft moments of story remain before complete silence falls. But the essence is here. Wonder is valuable, mystery is precious, questions without answers are gifts rather than frustrations. Mars taught this tonight, and the teaching is received, is internalized, is carried forward into whatever comes next. Rest now in the gift, rest in the wonder, rest in the peaceful knowledge that you're permitted to question, encouraged to imagine, invited to wonder about mysteries that may never resolve. The universe is generous in this way, Mars is generous in this way, and you have been generous with yourself, allowing hours of wondering, accepting the invitation to contemplate possibilities, receiving the gift with open consciousness. That generosity circles back now, creating peace, creating rest, creating the perfect conditions for sleep to deepen and complete its restorative work. The gift is given, the gift is received, the circle completes. And in that completion, only rest remains, only peace, only the soft descent into sleep, carrying the gift of wonder with you into dreams, into darkness, into the deep unconsciousness where all gifts are integrated, all experiences processed, all journeys absorbed into the substance of self. Sleep now with the gift. Sleep in the wonder, sleep in the knowledge that mysteries persist, and that's beautiful, that questions remain, and that's perfect, that Mars keeps its secrets, and that's exactly as it should be. The gift is yours to keep. The wonder is yours to return to. The invitation remains open, but for now, only sleep. Deep, peaceful, complete sleep. The gift is given, the story fades, the silence welcomes rest. In these final moments before true silence falls, we rest in the vast quiet of space itself, the cosmic silence that surrounds all worlds, all stars, all mysteries, and all knowing. The silence of space is complete. No air to carry sound waves, no medium for vibration to propagate. In the vacuum between worlds, perfect quiet reigns, broken only by electromagnetic radiation, by light and radio waves, by the invisible spectrum that crosses emptiness without making a sound. Mars sits in this silence. Earth sits in this silence. All the worlds and all the stars, all the galaxies and all the cosmic structures, everything exists in this profound quiet, this absolute absence of acoustic phenomenon. And yet it's not an empty silence, it's full of presence, of the patient existence of matter and energy, of the ongoing processes of stars burning and planets turning, of the cosmic dance continuing in perfect soundlessness. Let yourself rest in this silence now. Not the silence of having nothing to say, but the silence of completion, of everything having been said that needs saying, of the story reaching its natural end and releasing into peace. The stars shine silently. They've been shining long before humans existed to observe them, will continue long after humans are gone. Their light crosses space without sound, arrives at your eyes without announcement, presents itself with perfect quietness. Mars reflects this starlight silently. Its surface absorbs some wavelengths, reflects others, creates the red appearance we observe, all without making any acoustic disturbance. The planet simply is, turning in silence, carrying its mysteries in perfect quiet. Let your consciousness merge with this silence now. Let the few remaining words dissolve into the wordless quiet that surrounds them. Let even the sense of listening fade until there's only the silence itself, complete and perfect and empty of everything except pure existence. The journey through Mars is complete. The wondering has been experienced. The gift has been given and received. What remains is only this, the silence of stars, the quiet of cosmic space, the profound rest that comes from releasing all questions into the dark. Mars sits in this silence, unchanged by our contemplation, unaffected by our wondering, simply existing as it has for billions of years and will for billions more. The planet needs nothing from us, we need nothing from it, now that the wondering is complete. Only silence remains, cosmic, complete, peaceful silence. And in that silence, sleep finds its deepest expression. Not as activity, but as absence. Not as process, but as cessation. Just the quiet continuation of existence, without consciousness observing it, without awareness fragmenting it into subject and object, observer and observed. Let the silence have you now. Let it take you completely. Let consciousness dissolve into the cosmic quiet where no thoughts arise, no dreams disturb, no memories surface. Only silence, only darkness, only the profound peace of complete rest. The stars shine in their silence. Mars turns in its silence. And you rest in silence, deep and complete, beyond words, beyond story, beyond everything except the simple fact of existing in a cosmos that holds you in its vast, quiet embrace. Sleep now in the silence of stars. Sleep in the cosmic quiet. Sleep in the peace that requires nothing, holds everything, and simply is. The silence completes what the story began. The darkness fulfills what the light promised. The rest provides what the journey sought. Everything is complete. Everything is quiet. Everything is exactly as it should be. If you're still with me, still aware in any way, let these final soft words serve as gentle benediction, as quiet blessing on the journey we've shared. Tonight, you drifted through ancient skies and forgotten worlds, through oceans that may have been, and civilizations that might never have existed. You wondered about Mars, about consciousness, about the mysteries written in dust and stone. Whether you remember any of this when you wake, whether it shaped your dreams or simply provided background for deeper rest, the journey has served its purpose. You've rested. You've wondered. You've let mystery be mysterious without demanding resolution. Mars continues its patient orbit, keeping whatever secrets it holds unchanged by our contemplation, but perhaps grateful in some poetic sense for being noticed, being wondered about, being held in human imagination and curiosity. And you continue your own orbit through days and nights, through waking and sleep, through the cycles that structure your existence and connect you to the larger rhythms of planets and stars. May you carry forward some small gift from this journey, perhaps permission to wonder, perhaps comfort with mystery, perhaps simply the memory of having rested in questions without needing answers. The red planet watches over us still, as it has for all of human history, a steady light in the night sky, a reminder of other worlds, of cosmic possibilities, of the gift of being conscious in a mysterious universe. If this journey brought you peace, if these hours provided rest, you're welcome to return any time. The story will be here. The mysteries will wait. Mars will continue its patient existence, inviting wonder, offering questions, giving the gift of its enigmatic presence. Until then, sleep well, rest completely, dream beautifully. May your rest be deep, and may your waking be gentle. Good night, fellow wanderer. Good night, distant Mars. Good night, mysterious cosmos. Only peace now, only rest, only the infinite quiet of complete surrender to sleep.